I was sold to a monster, and I had 24 hours to say yes. That's the reality 19-year-old Lena Hayes faces when her father drags her from her ordinary American life straight into the heart of Italy's underworld. One moment she's planning college applications. The next, she's standing in a marble fortress, staring into the cold eyes of Victor Moretti, a crime lord who owns half the city and now claims to own her too. The deal is simple: become his wife or her father dies screaming. If you want to see how far desperation can push someone, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The plane touched down in Rome just after midnight, and Lena Hayes knew something was catastrophically wrong. Her father hadn't spoken in 6 hours, not since they'd boarded in Philadelphia, not during the layover in London, not even when the flight attendant asked if they wanted dinner. He just sat there, knuckles white around the armrest, staring at nothing while sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cabin's cool air. "Dad?" Lena tried again as they shuffled through customs. "What's happening? Why are we here?" Robert Hayes flinched like she'd struck him. Just stay close. Don't talk to anyone." The fluorescent lights of Leonardo da Vinci Airport buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Lena pulled her jacket tighter, suddenly aware of how underdressed she was. Yoga pants, a university hoodie, sneakers she'd been wearing when her father had burst into her apartment 3 hours before their flight. "Pack a bag. Now. We're leaving." "Leaving? Dad, I have class tomorrow." "Lena, please." That single word, cracked and desperate, had frozen her mid-sentence. She'd never heard her father beg. Robert Hayes was a stoic man, a quiet accountant who did taxes for small businesses and spent his evenings watching baseball. He didn't do spontaneous. He didn't do international flights booked at 3 in the morning. He definitely didn't sound afraid. So she'd packed. And now here they were, in a country she'd never visited, for reasons he refused to explain. Outside the terminal, the night air hit her like a warm hand. September in Rome apparently meant humidity that made her hair stick to her neck. Her father scanned the pickup area with jerky, panicked movements, his hand trembling as he gripped his single duffel bag. "There," he muttered, nodding toward a black Mercedes idling near the curb. The windows were tinted so dark Lena couldn't see inside. Her stomach twisted. "Dad, whose car is that? Just get in. I'm not getting into some random—" The rear door opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Lena's entire semester tuition. His face was hard, expressionless, and he didn't ask if they needed help. He simply opened the trunk and stood there, waiting. Robert grabbed Lena's arm and pulled her toward the car. "Dad, stop. Get in!" His grip hurt. Lena stumbled forward, her heartbeat hammering in her ears as the suited man took their bags with mechanical efficiency. Up close, she could see the bulge under his jacket. A gun. This man was carrying a gun. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" "I'll explain. Just, please, Lena, get in the car." She should have run. Every instinct screamed at her to bolt back into the airport, to find security, to call someone. But her father's face stopped her. He looked broken, hollowed out, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff with no way back. So she got in. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Another man sat in the driver's seat, older, with gray at his temples and the same dead-eyed expression. Neither of them spoke. The engine purred to life, and they pulled away from the terminal, merging into the sparse late-night traffic. Lena twisted in her seat to face her father. "Talk, now." Robert's hands shook in his lap. He opened his mouth twice before any sound came out. "I made a mistake." "What kind of mistake requires fleeing the country?" "A financial one." The words landed like stones. Lena stared at him, trying to process. "You're an accountant. You manage other people's money. What did you—" "I borrowed from the wrong people." Silence. The city lights blurred past the window. Ancient buildings pressed against modern ones, shuttered shops and late-night cafes, beautiful and foreign and utterly terrifying. "How much?" Lena's voice came out smaller than she intended. 300,000. The number punched the air from her lungs. Dollars? Euros. Over $350,000. Lena's mind reeled. Her father lived in a modest apartment, drove a 12-year-old Honda, clipped coupons for groceries. Where had he even... I thought I could fix it, Robert continued, his voice breaking. There was this investment opportunity, a sure thing, and I just needed capital to get in. So I found someone who would lend it to me. I was going to triple the money, pay them back with interest, and finally, he choked on whatever came next. It wasn't a sure thing. Jesus Christ, Dad. I tried to pay them back. I sold everything. The apartment, the car, my retirement accounts. It wasn't enough. They said, he couldn't finish. Lena watched her father crumble in real time. This man who'd raised her alone after her mother died, who'd worked 2 jobs to keep her in decent schools, who'd been so proud when she got her acceptance letter to university. They said if I didn't settle the debt, they'd make an example of me, Robert whispered. And then they offered an alternative. The car turned off the main road onto something narrower, darker. Stone walls rose on either side, crowned with vegetation that spilled over like nature trying to reclaim the city. What alternative? Robert looked at her, and Lena saw something die in his eyes. You. The word hung in the air like a noose. Me, Lena repeated slowly. What does that mean, me? There's a man, an important man. He's willing to forgive the debt if... Robert's voice cracked. If you agree to certain terms. The car climbed higher into the hills, away from the tourist districts, away from anyone who might hear her scream. Lena's hands curled into fists, nails digging into her palms. What terms? Marriage! The world tilted. Lena actually laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. You're insane. You didn't just drag me to Italy. You sold me like property? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Her voice rose, and the driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. She didn't care. You gambled away money you didn't have, and now I'm supposed to marry some stranger to fix your mess? He's not... It's complicated. How old is he? Silence. Dad, how old? Early 50s. Lena's vision swam. She was 19, still figuring out her major, still getting carded at bars, still occasionally sleeping with her childhood teddy bear when final stress got bad. And her father wanted her to marry a man in his 50s. No. The word came out steady, certain. Absolutely not. Turn this car around. Lena, I'm not doing this. I don't care about your debt. I don't care about your mistakes. You don't get to trade me like collateral. They'll kill me. 4 words. Quiet. Final. Lena froze. Her father met her eyes, and she saw the truth there. This wasn't exaggeration or manipulation. This was fact. If she refused, Robert Hayes was a dead man. There has to be another way, she said, hating how her voice shook. Police? Witness protection. Something. These people own the police. They own judges, politicians, half the businesses in this city. There's no protection from them. There's no running. He reached for her hand and she yanked it away. I know I have no right to ask this. I know I've failed you in every possible way. But please, Lena, I'm begging you, just meet him. Just consider it. Consider marrying a man I've never met to save your worthless ass? The slap would have been kinder than the flinch her words caused. Robert shrank back, and for a moment, Lena almost felt guilty. Almost. The car turned through an ornate iron gate that swung open as they approached. No guard station, but Lena spotted cameras, motion sensors, the kind of security that screamed serious money and serious paranoia. The driveway stretched ahead, lined with cypress trees that stood like sentinels in the darkness. Then the villa came into view. It was massive, 3 stories of honey-colored stone with arched windows that glowed with warm light. Manicured gardens spread out on either side, dotted with fountains and sculptures that probably cost more than her father's debt. It looked like something from a movie. Beautiful, imposing, utterly unreal. The car stopped at the base of wide stone steps. The driver got out first, then opened Lena's door. She sat frozen, her body refusing to move. Miss, the driver said in accented English, please. It wasn't a request. Lena stepped out on shaking legs. The night air smelled like jasmine and rosemary, deceptively peaceful. Her father came around the car, and together they climbed the steps toward double doors that opened before they reached them. A woman stood in the doorway, older, elegant, wearing a black dress, and an expression of cool appraisal. She said something in rapid Italian to the driver, who nodded and disappeared with their bags. "Miss Hayes." The woman's English was perfect, barely accented. "Welcome. I am Signora Russo. Please, come inside." The entrance hall was obscene. Marble floors, a chandelier that looked like it belonged in Versailles, artwork that might have been actual Renaissance pieces on the walls. Lena's sneakers squeaked on the polished stone, the sound jarring and out of place. "Don Moretti will see you shortly," Signora Russo said, already turning toward a hallway. "I will show you to the receiving room." Don Moretti. Even Lena, with her limited exposure to Italian culture, knew that title. Don. Not Mr., not Sir. Don. The word the Mafia used for their bosses. Her father had sold her to the mob. The receiving room was smaller than the entrance hall, but no less intimidating. Plush furniture in deep burgundy, more art, floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the lights of Rome spread out below like scattered diamonds. Signora Russo gestured for them to sit, then left without another word. Lena remained standing. "I want to leave." "Lena, now. We're leaving now. We can't. Watch me." She headed for the door, but her father caught her arm. "If you walk out that door, I'm dead by morning. Is that what you want? Don't put this on me." She whirled on him, tears burning her eyes. "You did this. You made these choices. I didn't ask to be born, and I sure as hell didn't ask to be your get-out-of-debt-free card." "I know." Robert's voice broke completely. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. But we're here now, and they're not going to let us leave until—" The door opened. Lena's words died in her throat. The man who entered was not what she'd expected. She'd pictured someone grotesque, obviously criminal, maybe fat and balding with gold chains and a cruel smile. Movie mob boss stuff. Victor Moretti was none of those things. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of build that suggested he still spent time in the gym despite his age. His hair was dark with distinguished threads of silver at the temples, slicked back in a style that should have looked dated but somehow didn't. He wore a charcoal suit tailored so precisely it might have been sewn onto him, with a black shirt underneath and no tie. His face was all sharp angles, strong jaw, prominent cheekbones, a nose that looked like it had been broken at least once. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark, almost black, they swept over Lena with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. Not sexual, that would have been easier to process. This was assessment, calculation. Like she was a puzzle he was already solving. He said something in Italian, a dismissal. Signora Russo materialized from somewhere and gestured for Robert to follow her. "Wait, what?" Lena started, but her father was already moving, being ushered out of the room. The door closed. She was alone with him. Victor Moretti circled her slowly, like a buyer inspecting merchandise. Lena forced herself to stand still, to meet his gaze even as her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib. "So," he said finally, his English carrying a rich Italian accent that made every word sound deliberate. "You are Robert's daughter. And you're the man who thinks he can buy me." One dark eyebrow rose. "You have your father's coloring, but it seems not his sense of self-preservation. My father's an idiot who gambled with money he didn't have. What I am is pissed off." "Yes, I can see that." He moved to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of deep red wine. "Sit." "I'll stand." "I said sit." The words didn't get louder, but something in them changed. They became an order backed by the kind of authority that expected obedience. Lena sat. Hated herself for it, but sat. Victor handed her one of the wine glasses. She didn't drink. He settled into the chair across from her, utterly relaxed, like they were discussing the weather instead of her future. "Your father owes me 300,000 euros. He cannot pay. I offered him an alternative and he accepted. Do you understand these facts? I understand that you're a criminal who preys on desperate people. I prefer entrepreneur." A slight smile touched his lips, cold and humorless. "Your father came to me seeking an investment loan. I was clear about the terms, the interest, the consequences of default. He signed the agreement. I did not prey on him. He sought me out. And now you want his daughter as payment. That's trafficking. I want a wife. Your father suggested you might be suitable. He sipped his wine. If you agree, his debt is forgiven. If you refuse, he let the sentence hang. He dies. In the long run, we all die, Miss Hayes. But yes, your father's death would be considerably more imminent and unpleasant than average. The casual way he said it made Lena's skin crawl. You'd really kill him over money? I would kill him over disrespect. The money is secondary. Victor leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the picture of patience. Let me be clear about something. I am not a good man. I do not pretend to be. I operate in a world where weakness is death and debts are sacred. Your father entered this world willingly. He lost. These are the consequences. And I'm just collateral damage. You are an opportunity. He gestured around them. As my wife, you would want for nothing. This villa, homes in Milan and the Amalfi Coast, cars, clothing, anything you desired. You would be protected, elevated to a position of respect and power. I'd be a prisoner. You'd be a partner. Lena laughed bitterly. Partner. Right. Because nothing says partnership like being sold off to erase Daddy's gambling debt. Something flickered across Victor's face. Annoyance, maybe, or reassessment. You are educated? I was, before I got dragged here. University? Second year, English literature. She didn't know why she was answering, maybe because it felt like holding on to something real in this surreal nightmare. Interesting? He stood, moving to the windows. With his back to her, he seemed less intimidating, just a man in a nice suit looking at a pretty view. I have no need for a trembling, terrified wife who submits out of fear. That would bore me. But a woman with fire, with intelligence. He turned back to face her. That could be valuable. I'm not for sale. Everything is for sale, Miss Hayes. The only question is price. He crossed back to her, and Lena forced herself not to lean away as he stopped directly in front of her chair. Here is my offer. Agree to marry me, and your father's debt disappears. More than that, he receives a monthly stipend, enough to live comfortably for the rest of his life. You remain here, as my wife, learning our ways and our language. After 1 year, if you are truly miserable, we can discuss alternative arrangements. Divorce? Something like that. It was a trap, had to be. Men like this didn't just let people walk away. But Lena's mind raced through her options and kept coming back to the same terrible conclusion. She had none. She could refuse. Her father would die, probably horribly, and Lena would… What? Fly home? The men who'd driven them here would never let her reach the airport. She could try to run, but where? She didn't speak Italian, didn't know the city, had no money and no resources. They'd find her in hours. She could fight, scream, kick, claw her way to the door. And then what? There were guards, cameras, locked gates. Fighting would only delay the inevitable. Or she could agree, buy time. Marry this monster and look for an opening, a weakness, some way to escape once she'd learned the layout and the rhythms of this place. If I say yes, Lena said slowly, I want terms. Victor's expression sharpened with interest. Go on. My father gets his money, like you said, but I want proof he's safe, regular contact. Done. Next? I'm not sleeping with you. The words tumbled out, desperate and defiant. I don't care what marriage traditionally means. You don't touch me. Something dark passed through his eyes. That term may not be realistic long term, but I have no interest in forcing myself on an unwilling woman. You'll share my quarters but not my bed until you choose otherwise. I won't choose otherwise. We'll see. He said it like a certainty, and Lena wanted to throw her wine glass at his arrogant face. Other terms? Freedom to move around the house. I'm not going to be locked in a room like some prisoner. The villa and grounds are yours to explore, with escort. The city beyond requires permission. Agreed? Each concession made it worse somehow, made it real. Lena swallowed hard. When? When what? When would the wedding be? 3 days. We have a chapel on the grounds, a priest who asks no questions. Simple, private, legal. 3 days to prepare to marry a stranger. 3 days before her life stopped being her own. And if I refuse? She asked quietly. If I say no, what happens to me? Victor tilted his head, considering. You leave with your father. You're placed on the first plane to America, and within a week Robert Hayes is found in pieces in a dozen different locations. Nausea rolled through her stomach. You're a monster. Yes, he didn't even flinch. But I'm a monster who keeps my promises. Agree to this marriage and I promise your father lives. I promise you'll be protected, provided for, treated with respect as my wife. I will not abuse you. I will not force you, but I will expect loyalty, discretion, and eventually, his eyes traveled over her deliberately. Cooperation. Cooperation. The word tasted like ash. We both know how this ends, Lena. He used her first name for the first time, and she hated how intimate it sounded in his accent. You agree because you have no real choice. I accept because you're young, beautiful, and intelligent enough to be useful. We make the best of an imperfect situation. Who knows? You might even find aspects of this life appealing. I'll hate you. The words came out venomous. Every single day I'll hate you. Hate me then. As long as you stand beside me when it matters, your feelings are your own. He extended his hand like they were concluding a business deal. Lena stared at it, strong, tanned, with a scar across the knuckles that told stories she didn't want to know. This was it, the moment. Say yes and become Mrs. Victor Moretti, property of a crime lord. Say no and watch her father die, knowing she could have saved him. Some choice. Lena's hand shook as she reached out. Their fingers touched, and Victor's grip was warm, firm, completely controlled. He pulled her to her feet, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woody and expensive. Say it, he commanded softly, so there's no misunderstanding. Her throat felt like sandpaper. I agree. To marry you, to be your wife. Each word was a nail in her own coffin. In exchange for my father's debt forgiven and his safety guaranteed. Good. Victor released her hand but didn't step back. Your father will be escorted to a hotel tonight and given money for expenses. Tomorrow, Signora Russo will take you for measurements. You'll need appropriate clothing. The day after, you'll meet with the priest. 3 days from now, we marry. Any questions? About 1,000, but Lena's mind had gone blank with shock. She shook her head. Then welcome to your new life, mia futura moglie. He said something else in Italian that sounded formal, final. Then he moved past her to the door, opening it to reveal Signora Russo waiting in the hall. Show Miss Hayes to her quarters. Make sure she has everything she needs. He was gone before Lena could respond, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway until they faded into silence. Signora Russo gestured. This way, please. Lena's legs somehow carried her forward, following the older woman through a maze of corridors and up a sweeping staircase. The villa was enormous, room after room of opulence that blurred together. She barely registered any of it. Finally, they stopped at a door that Signora Russo opened to reveal a bedroom that was larger than Lena's entire apartment back home. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in silk that looked like it cost more than a car. French doors led to a balcony. Original artwork hung on walls painted a soft cream. An attached bathroom visible through another door appeared to feature a tub the size of a small pool. Your belongings will be brought up shortly, Signora Russo said. If you need anything, there is a call button beside the bed. I would suggest you rest. Tomorrow will be a very full day. She left, and Lena heard the distinct click of a lock. She was in a gilded cage. Lena walked to the French doors and tried them. Locked. The windows didn't open. Even the bathroom had frosted glass that didn't show the outside world. Beautiful, luxurious, and utterly inescapable. She sank onto the edge of the bed, and that's when the tears finally came. Great, heaving sobs that shook her entire body. She cried for her stolen future, for the college degree she'd never finish, for the normal life she'd never have. She cried for her father's weakness and her own helplessness. She cried until there was nothing left, until she was hollow and empty. The bedside clock read 3:47 a.m. when she finally stopped. Somewhere below she heard voices, men speaking Italian in low tones, guards probably, making sure she didn't try anything stupid. Lena stood and walked to the mirror above an antique dresser. The girl looking back had red-rimmed eyes, tear-stained cheeks, tangled hair. She looked young, terrified, broken. 3 days, that girl in the mirror whispered. 3 days until you belong to him. No. Lena straightened, wiped her face, forced steel into her spine. 3 days until she married him, but she would never belong to anyone. Victor Moretti could put a ring on her finger and call her wife, but he couldn't touch who she was inside. She would survive this, learn everything she could about this world, this villa, these people, find the weaknesses in their security, the gaps in their attention, and when the opportunity came, and it would come, she would run. Until then, she would play the role. The obedient bride, the respectful wife, whatever it took to keep breathing, to keep planning. Victor thought he'd bought himself a partner, but Lena Hayes wasn't for sale. She was for rent, temporarily, until she found a way out. She repeated that thought like a mantra as she finally crawled into the enormous bed, still fully dressed, too exhausted to care about the silk sheets or the uncomfortable waistband of her yoga pants. I will survive this. I will escape. He doesn't own me. He doesn't own me. He doesn't... Sleep took her mid-thought, dragging her down into darkness where, mercifully, Victor Moretti didn't exist. Marditan. Morning came too soon, announced by Signora Russo entering without knocking. Lena jolted awake, disoriented by the unfamiliar room and the soft light filtering through curtains she didn't remember closing. Breakfast in 30 minutes, the older woman announced, setting down a tray on a nearby table. Shower, dress, the blue outfit hanging in the closet. She left before Lena could protest. Not that protesting would matter. That had become abundantly clear. The shower was an exercise in surreal luxury. The bathroom featured heated marble floors, a rainfall showerhead that felt like standing in a tropical storm, and products that probably cost more per ounce than gold. Lena stood under the water until it started to cool, trying to wash away the grime of travel and terror. The blue outfit turned out to be a simple but elegant dress in navy linen, paired with low heels and delicate gold jewelry. It fit perfectly, which meant someone had estimated her size with disturbing accuracy. Or, more likely, they'd gone through her luggage and measured her existing clothes. The thought of strangers handling her belongings made her skin crawl. Breakfast was served in a sun-drenched room with views of the gardens. Lena found her father already seated at a long table, looking small and tired. An untouched plate of pastries sat in front of him. "Lena!" He stood when she entered, reaching for her, but she moved past him to take a seat on the opposite side of the table. The hurt on his face should have satisfied her. It didn't. A young woman in staff uniform brought Lena coffee, espresso, thick and bitter, and more pastries, along with fruit, cheese, cold meats. Food for a dozen people presented for two. They ate in silence for several minutes before Robert finally spoke. "I'm leaving this morning." Lena's head snapped up. "What?" Don Moretti arranged it. "A hotel in the city, expenses paid until I can figure out next steps." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "He's been generous." "Generous," Lena repeated flatly. "He's taking your daughter, and you think he's generous because he's throwing you some cash?" "I know how this looks. Do you?" She leaned forward. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I'm 19, Dad. I was supposed to be studying for midterms. Instead, I'm being forced to marry a criminal because you couldn't manage your own greed. I was trying to give us a better life. We had a life. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. And you threw it away for what? A bigger apartment? A nicer car?" Robert's hands clenched around his coffee cup. "You don't understand. After your mother died, I watched you grow up in hand-me-downs, sharing a bedroom with my office, eating pasta 5 nights a week because it was cheap. I wanted more for you. I didn't ask for more." The words burst out too loud in the quiet room. "I never asked you to risk everything on some stupid investment scheme. That was your ego, your pride. And now I'm paying for it." "I know." His voice broke. "I know, and I'm sorry. If I could take it back—" "But you can't." Lena stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You can't take it back, and I can't refuse without getting you killed. So congratulations, Dad. You finally gave me a better life. I hope it was worth it." She left him sitting there and found Signora Russo waiting in the hallway like she'd been listening the whole time. Probably had been. This way, Miss Hayes, we have appointments. The next several hours blurred together in a montage of Italian efficiency. A tailor came to the villa, measuring every inch of Lena's body while making notes in rapid-fire Italian. A hairstylist followed, evaluating her natural waves and color with the critical eye of an artist approaching a difficult canvas. Someone else appeared to assess her shoe size, jewelry preferences, makeup shades. It felt like being prepared for auction. Through it all, Signora Russo supervised with the calm authority of a general directing troops. She answered Lena's questions in clipped English, offering no more information than absolutely necessary. Where's Victor? Don Moretti has business in the city. When will he be back? When his business concludes. What exactly does he do? What's his business? A pause, then, import and export. Sure, import and export. Lena had watched enough crime shows to know what that was code for. By early afternoon, she was exhausted and starving. Lunch appeared as if summoned, more Italian delicacies that Lena picked at without enthusiasm. She was just pushing around a piece of prosciutto when voices echoed from the entrance hall. Victor had returned. He strode into the dining room still in his suit from the night before, though his jacket was gone and his sleeves were rolled up. There was a faint shadow of stubble on his jaw, and when he poured himself water from a crystal pitcher, Lena noticed his knuckles were scraped raw. How are the preparations? He asked casually, like they were planning a dinner party instead of a forced marriage. Fine, Lena said shortly. Good. Tomorrow you'll meet Father Matteo. He'll explain the ceremony. It will be brief. Can't wait. Victor's eyes narrowed at her tone. He dismissed Signora Russo with a gesture, and suddenly they were alone. He took the chair her father had occupied that morning, close enough that Lena could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Let me be clear about something, he said quietly. I understand that you're angry. You have every right to be. But disrespect, particularly in front of others, will not be tolerated. When we are alone, you may speak your mind. In public, you will be polite, deferential, and loyal. Do you understand? Or what? The words escaped before Lena could stop them. You'll kill me too? No. He leaned back, studying her. But I will make your life here considerably more difficult than it needs to be. You want freedom to move around the villa? Earn it by showing you can be trusted. You want contact with your father? Prove you understand the rules. This doesn't have to be a prison, Lena, but if you fight me at every turn, that's exactly what it will become. Lena's jaw clenched. She wanted to throw her plate at him, to scream, to do anything to crack that infuriating calm. But she forced herself to breathe, to think, play the role, buy time. I understand, she said through gritted teeth. I don't think you do. Not yet. Victor stood, moving around the table to stand behind her chair. Lena's muscles locked as she felt his presence at her back, too close. You think this is temporary. You think you'll find a way out, back to your American life. You won't. His hand came to rest on her shoulder, not gripping, just touching, his palm warm through the thin linen of her dress. Lena stopped breathing. This is your life now, Victor continued, his voice low and inexorable. The sooner you accept that, the easier it becomes. Fight it, and you'll only hurt yourself. I've broken stronger people than you, Lena. Don't make me break you too. Then he was gone, his footsteps receding down the hall, leaving Lena trembling with rage and something else she refused to name. Fear. For the first time since this nightmare began, real fear settled into her bones. Because Victor Moretti wasn't bluffing. He wasn't some movie villain who would monologue about his plans and leave an obvious escape route. He was a man who'd built an empire on violence and control, and he'd just made it clear that Lena was now part of that empire. Property. She sat frozen in that chair for long minutes before Signora Russo returned, politely informing her that the evening meal would be served at 8, dress code semi-formal, and Don Moretti expected her presence. Of course he did. The rest of the day passed in a hay-in. Lena retreated to her room, tested the doors and windows again, still locked, and tried to formulate some kind of plan. But every scenario ended the same way. Guards, guns, gates. No money, no passport. She'd checked her bag. It was gone. No way to even call for help. At 7:45, Signora Russo knocked and entered, carrying a dress. For dinner. It was deep emerald green, simple but elegant, with a neckline that showed just enough collarbone to be sophisticated. Lena put it on because refusing seemed pointless. The woman also brought jewelry, real gold, possibly real emeralds in the earrings, and watched with approval as Lena mechanically accessorized herself. "You look lovely," Signora Russo said, and Lena couldn't tell if there was sympathy in her voice or just professional satisfaction. Dinner was served in a different room, smaller and more intimate, with only 2 place settings at a table clearly meant for 12. Victor was already there, changed into dark slacks and a crisp white shirt that somehow made him look both civilized and dangerous. He stood when she entered. "Beautiful." Lena sat without responding. The meal was exquisite. Multiple courses of things Lena couldn't identify, but that tasted like heaven. She ate mechanically, aware of Victor watching her between bites. "Tell me about yourself," he said eventually. "Why?" "Because you're about to become my wife. I'd like to know who I'm marrying." "You're marrying a 19-year-old college student who likes books and hates you. There, done." A slight smile. "What kind of books?" "The kind that let me escape reality." "Ah, fantasy. Sometimes, classics mostly. Austen, the Brontes, George Eliot. Romantics. Women who wrote about being trapped in impossible situations and finding ways to survive. Turns out that's pretty relevant now." Victor's smile widened. "You think you're Jane Eyre? The poor governess who tames the brooding master?" "I think I'm Jane Eyre locked in the attic by Rochester, the madwoman no one wants to acknowledge." "Then let's hope you don't burn down the house." Was he actually making a literary joke? Lena stared at him, trying to reconcile this man, cultured, educated, apparently well-read, with the criminal who'd threatened to chop her father into pieces. "You're surprised," Victor observed. "You thought I was just a thug. Aren't you? I'm many things. Yes, I've killed people. Yes, I've hurt people. But I've also built businesses, employed thousands, supported communities. The world isn't as simple as good and evil, Lena. It's mostly just power and the willingness to use it. That's a convenient philosophy for someone who traffics women." "I don't traffic women. I marry them." He sipped his wine. "There's a difference." "Not from where I'm sitting." "Then let me explain where you're sitting." Victor set down his glass with careful precision. "You are about to become one of the most protected women in Italy. My name carries weight, fear, respect, influence. No one will dare harm you. No one will dare insult you. You'll want for nothing material, and in return, all I ask is loyalty and discretion." "And my body?" "Eventually." "Yes." He didn't even have the grace to look ashamed. "I'm not a monk, Lena. And you're a beautiful woman, but as I said, I have no interest in force. When you come to my bed, it will be because you choose to." "Never happening." "We'll see." That certainty again. It made Lena want to prove him wrong so badly her teeth ached. They finished the meal in tense silence. Afterward, Victor stood and extended his hand. "Walk with me." It wasn't a question. Lena took his hand because refusing seemed like the kind of public disrespect he'd warned against, and she needed to pick her battles. He led her through the villa and out into the gardens. Night had fallen, and the grounds were illuminated by subtle lighting that made the fountains glow and cast romantic shadows among the hedges. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like a gilded cage with better landscaping. "Tomorrow," Victor said as they walked, "you'll meet Father Matteo. He's been with my family for years. Trust him." "I don't trust anyone here." "Fair enough, but he'll answer your questions about the ceremony, about what's expected." "What is expected? Besides the obvious." Victor stopped by a fountain, watching water cascade over stone. "You'll stand beside me. Say the words, wear the ring. After, there will be a small dinner with my closest associates, men you'll need to recognize and respect. Then we'll retire to my quarters." Lena's stomach dropped. "You said to sleep, in separate rooms within the suite." He turned to face her. "I keep my promises, Lena. You won't share my bed until you're ready." "And if I'm never ready?" "Then we'll have a very long celibate marriage." He said it lightly, but something in his expression suggested he didn't believe that outcome for a second. They walked further, and Lena realized they'd reached the edge of the property. A high stone wall ran along the perimeter, topped with something that glinted in the moonlight. Glass? No, razor wire, decorative but deadly. Don't even think about it, Victor said quietly. About what? Climbing over. The wall is electrified. Even if you made it, there are guards, cameras, motion sensors. You'd be caught before you reach the main road. Sounds like a prison. Sounds like security. I have enemies, Lena. People who would love to hurt me by hurting what's mine. These measures keep you safe. I was safe in Philadelphia. Were you? He turned to her, and in the low light his face looked almost gentle. Your father's debt would have followed you there eventually. His creditors would have found you, used you to pressure him. At least here, you are protected. Protected and owned. Yes. No apology, no justification, just brutal honesty. They stood there in the garden, the sound of the fountain filling the silence between them. Lena searched Victor's face for something, regret, shame, anything human. But all she saw was that calculating assessment, like she was a problem he was determined to solve. It's late, he finally said. You should rest. Tomorrow is another long day. He walked her back to her room, and this time Lena noticed the guard stationed subtly at the end of the hallway. Young, alert, definitely armed. More decoration for her gilded cage. At her door, Victor paused. Sleep well, mia futura mogli. What does that mean? My future wife. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture startlingly intimate. 2 more days, Lena. Then you'll be mine in truth. He left her there, and Lena entered her beautiful prison, hearing the lock click behind her. 2 more days. 48 hours until she became Mrs. Victor Moretti. And still no plan, no escape, no hope. Lena stood at the window looking out at the twinkling lights of Rome in the distance. Freedom was right there, visible but untouchable. Like everything else in this nightmare. She pressed her palm against the glass, and for the first time since childhood, she prayed. Not to any specific deity, she wasn't sure she believed anymore, but to the universe, to fate, to anything listening. Please, help me find a way out, please. The glass stayed cold against her skin, and the city lights kept twinkling, and no answer came. The morning arrived with brutal efficiency. Lena hadn't slept, just stared at the ceiling until gray light began filtering through the curtains, counting down the hours until her life officially ended. 41 hours now. Less than 2 days. Signora Russo appeared at 7 sharp, already dressed and composed, carrying a breakfast tray that Lena ignored. Father Matteo will be here at 9, the older woman announced, setting down the tray with a pointed look at the untouched food. You should eat something. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. Fainting during your wedding preparations would be, inconvenient. The way she said it, clinical, detached, made Lena wonder what this woman thought of the situation. Did Signora Russo care that her employer was forcing a teenager into marriage? Or was this just another task on her daily checklist, somewhere between supervising the staff and ordering groceries? Lena forced down some bread and coffee, her stomach rebelling with every swallow. By the time she was dressed, another perfectly fitted outfit that had appeared in the closet overnight, her hands were shaking. Father Matteo turned out to be a small man in his 60s, with kind eyes, and the sort of gentle demeanor that probably worked well for baptisms and funerals. He greeted Lena in accented English, his smile warm and apparently genuine. Miss Hayes, what a pleasure to meet you. Don Moretti has told me so much about you. Lena doubted that very much, but managed a polite nod. They were meeting in what Signora Russo called the morning room, another space filled with antiques and artwork that probably belonged in a museum. Father Matteo settled into a chair and gestured for Lena to sit across from him. I understand this is all quite sudden for you, he began gently. An international marriage, a new culture, many changes at once. That's one way to put it. If he noticed the edge in her voice, he didn't comment. The ceremony itself will be simple. Traditional vows, the exchange of rings, my blessing. The entire service should take no more than 20 minutes. 20 minutes to sign away her freedom. Seemed about right. And after? Lena asked. What happens after? There will be a dinner, as is customary. Don Moretti has invited his closest associates to welcome you into the family. Family. The word tasted bitter. Is that what we're calling organized crime now? Father Mateo's smile didn't waver. I've known Victor since he was a boy. He can be intense, but he is not without honor. If he has promised to care for you, he will keep that promise. He promised not to force me into bed. That's a pretty low bar for honor. Perhaps. The priest folded his hands in his lap. But it is more than many men in his position would offer. Victor Moretti is a complicated man, Miss Hayes. Capable of great violence, yes, but also great loyalty. If you are his wife, he will protect you with his life. I don't want his protection. I want my freedom. We rarely get what we want in this life. We get what we're given, and we make the best of it. Father Mateo leaned forward, his voice dropping. I cannot change your circumstances, but I can tell you that many women would consider themselves fortunate to marry a man of Don Moretti's wealth and influence. Then maybe he should marry one of them instead of me. The priest sighed. You have fire, that's good. You'll need it. He stood, smoothing his cassock. The ceremony is the day after tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I suggest you use the time between now and then to prepare yourself mentally and spiritually. This is happening, Miss Hayes. Fighting it will only make you miserable. He left her sitting there, his words echoing in the sudden silence. This is happening, as if Lena needed the reminder. The rest of the day dragged by in a fog of wedding preparations that felt like being dressed for her own funeral. More fittings, this time for the wedding dress itself. A creation of ivory silk and delicate lace that probably cost more than her father's debt. It was beautiful. Lena hated it. The seamstress, a tiny woman with pins clutched between her teeth, circled her like a shark. Bellissima, she murmured, adjusting the hem. Don Moretti will be very pleased. I'm so glad his pleasure is the priority here, Lena muttered. Signora Russo, supervising from a nearby chair, raised an eyebrow. You would do well to remember that his pleasure is now your concern. As his wife, your role is to support him, represent him, honor him. Sounds like I'm joining a cult, not a marriage. Call it what you like. The expectations remain the same. Lena bit back the dozen responses burning on her tongue. Pick your battles, she reminded herself. Save your energy for when it matters. Lunch was a solitary affair. Victor was away on business again, which Lena was grateful for. She'd seen enough of him to last a lifetime. But as afternoon stretched toward evening, Signora Russo appeared with an announcement that made Lena's stomach drop. Don Moretti requests your presence in his office. Why? He didn't say, but when Don Moretti requests, we comply. The office was on the ground floor, down a hallway Lena hadn't explored yet. Signora Russo knocked once and opened the door without waiting for a response. The room was pure masculine power. Dark wood, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of mahogany. Victor sat behind it, reading something on his laptop, still in business attire with his sleeves rolled up. He looked up when Lena entered, and something in his expression made her pause. Sit, he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Lena sat, hyper-aware of Signor Russo leaving and closing the door behind her. Alone with Victor again. That seemed to be happening more frequently. He closed the laptop and leaned back, studying her with that unnerving intensity. How were the preparations? Invasive. The dress fits well? It's a dress. It fits. A slight smile. Your enthusiasm is overwhelming. You want enthusiasm? Hire a prostitute. Oh, wait. You basically did. The smile vanished. Victor stood, moving around the desk with deliberate slowness. Lena forced herself not to lean away as he perched on the edge of the desk, directly in front of her chair, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Let's discuss something, he said quietly. Your attitude. My attitude is perfectly reasonable given the circumstances. Your attitude is going to get you in trouble. He tilted his head. I've been patient because I understand this is an adjustment, but tomorrow, you'll meet the men who form the backbone of my organization. They will be watching, judging, looking for weakness. If you show disrespect to me in front of them, it undermines my authority. Do you understand what I'm saying? You want me to play the obedient little wife. I want you to play the intelligent woman who understands that her survival depends on these men respecting her. Disrespect me, and they'll see you as fair game. Is that what you want? The question landed like ice water. Lena hadn't considered that. She'd been so focused on defying Victor that she hadn't thought about what that defiance would signal to others. No, she said quietly. Then here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow night at dinner, you will be polite, respectful. You'll speak when spoken to, smile when appropriate, and give these men no reason to think you're anything other than my willing bride. Can you do that? Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. But Lena thought about the men she'd glimpsed around the villa, hard-faced, cold-eyed, the kind who'd probably done things that would make her nightmares look tame. Victor at least had promised not to hurt her. The others had made no such promises. I can do that, she said. Good. Victor reached out and caught her chin, tilting her face up. His touch was gentle but firm, completely controlled. I need you to understand something, Lena. I didn't choose this arrangement to humiliate you. Your father offered you as payment, yes, but I could have refused. I could have taken his debt in blood and been done with it. Then why didn't you? Because when I met you, I saw something useful. Fire, intelligence, strength underneath the fear. His thumb brushed along her jawline, the gesture almost tender. I don't need a cowering victim. I need a partner who can stand beside me and hold her own. You have the potential to be that, but only if you stop fighting long enough to learn. Learn what? How to survive in this world. How to use your position for power instead of letting it use you. He released her chin but didn't move away. You think you're a prisoner, but if you play this right, you'll have more freedom than most women dream of. Wealth, influence, protection. All you have to do is stop seeing this as a cage and start seeing it as an opportunity. Lena laughed bitterly. An opportunity. Right, because being sold to a crime lord is every girl's dream. Many women would kill for the chance to marry into this family. Then they're welcome to it. Victor's jaw tightened. You're exhausting, you know that? Good. Maybe you'll get tired of me and let me go. Not happening. He stood, moving back around his desk. You're mine now, Lena. The sooner you accept that, the easier this becomes. Tomorrow night, I expect you to be on your best behavior. The night after, we marry. And then we'll see what kind of wife you really are. Dismissed. Lena stood on shaking legs and headed for the door, but Victor's voice stopped her. Lena. She turned. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something between frustration and fascination. Don't make me regret this, he said quietly. I chose you for a reason. Don't prove me wrong. She left without answering, her heart pounding against her ribs. That night, sleep was impossible. Lena paced her room like a caged animal, testing the doors and windows for the 100th time, searching for any weakness in her prison. There was none. Victor's security was absolute. By dawn, she'd made a decision. She would play along. Not because she'd given up, never that, but because open defiance wasn't working. If she wanted to escape, she needed to earn trust first. Make them think she was adjusting, accepting, becoming the obedient wife Victor wanted. And then, when they least expected it, she'd run. The wedding dinner loomed ahead like an execution. Lena spent the day in a numb haze as staff prepared the villa for the evening's event. Flowers arrived by the truckload, white roses, orchids, arrangements that looked like they belonged at a royal wedding. The dining room was transformed into something out of a fairy tale, all candlelight and crystal and enough food to feed an army. At 6, Signora Russo arrived with yet another dress. This one was deep burgundy, fitted through the bodice and flowing from the waist, with a neckline that showed just enough skin to be alluring without being inappropriate. Diamond earrings and a matching bracelet completed the look. You look like a Dawn's bride, Signora Russo said with approval. Lena looked like a sacrifice dressed for the altar, but she kept that thought to herself. Victor was waiting at the bottom of the stairs when she descended at 7. He changed into a black suit with a burgundy tie that matched her dress, coordinated, like they were actually a couple instead of captor and captive. When he saw her, something flickered in his eyes. Appreciation, possession, maybe both. Beautiful, he murmured, offering his arm. Ready? No, never. But Lena placed her hand on his arm, because refusing would defeat the purpose of tonight's performance. Remember, Victor said quietly as they walked toward the dining room. Polite, respectful. Let me do most of the talking, but engage when spoken to directly. These men are dangerous, Lena. Don't give them reason to see you as weak. The dining room was already full. 8 men stood as Victor entered, and Lena felt their eyes rake over her with varying degrees of interest and assessment. They were all older, 40s to 60s, wearing expensive suits and watches that cost more than cars. The kind of men who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. "Gentlemen," Victor said smoothly, his hand settling possessively on Lena's lower back, "allow me to introduce my fiancée, Lena Hayes. Lena, these are my closest associates and advisors." He went around the room, introducing each man. Marco, his second in command, with silver hair and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. Giovanni, who handled logistics, short and stocky with cold blue eyes. Dante, finances, tall and thin like a blade. The names blurred together, but Lena forced herself to smile, to nod, to murmur polite greetings in English that they returned with accented courtesy. They were all watching her, judging, trying to figure out who she was and what she meant to Victor. Dinner began with a toast. Marco raised his glass, his Italian rapid and fluid, but Lena caught Victor's name and her own. Something about fortune and family. Everyone drank and Lena sipped her wine, trying not to choke on the irony. The meal itself was spectacular, course after course of Italian cuisine that should have been delicious but tasted like sawdust in Lena's mouth. She picked at her food, hyper-aware of Victor beside her, his presence a constant reminder of her new reality. The conversation flowed in Italian, too fast for Lena to follow. But periodically, someone would address her directly in English, and she'd force herself to respond with the careful politeness Victor had demanded. "How are you finding Italy, Miss Hayes?" Giovanni asked during the third course. "It's beautiful," Lena said, the lie smooth as glass. "Very different from home, but beautiful." "And you're not frightened? To be so far from America?" Trap question. Lena could feel it. She glanced at Victor, who was watching her with that calculating expression. "I'm adjusting," she'd said carefully. "Victor has been very welcoming." "Has he?" Marco laughed, the sound not entirely friendly. "Our Don can be quite intense. I hope he's not overwhelming you." "Not at all. He's been a perfect gentleman." Victor's hand found hers under the table, squeezing once. Approval, maybe. Or warning. Dante leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Tell me, Miss Hayes, what do you think of our way of life here? It must be quite shocking to someone from your background." Another trap. Lena set down her fork, meeting his gaze directly. "I think every culture has its own rules and traditions. I'm here to learn yours." A diplomatic answer, Dante observed. "But do you approve?" "I approve of loyalty," Lena said, pulling from something Victor had said earlier. "And from what I understand, that's the foundation of everything here. Loyalty and respect." Several of the men exchanged glances. Marco's expression shifted into something that might have been grudging respect. "Smart girl," he said to Victor in English. "Where did you find her?" "She found me," Victor replied smoothly. "Or rather, her father did. But the moment I met Lena, I knew she was special." Lies. All lies. But delivered with such conviction that even Lena almost believed them. The conversation shifted back to Italian, but Lena noticed the men watching her with less suspicion now. She'd passed some test she hadn't known she was taking. As the meal wound down, Marco stood, raising his glass again. This time, he spoke in English. "To Don Moretti and his bride. May your union be long, prosperous, and filled with strong sons to carry on the family name." Everyone drank. Lena forced down her wine, trying not to think about the implications of strong sons. The idea of being pregnant with Victor's child made her want to vomit. After dinner, the men retired to Victor's office for cigars and business talk. Lena was dismissed with polite nods and knowing looks that made her skin crawl. Signora Russo appeared to escort her back to her room. "You did well tonight," the older woman said as they climbed the stairs. "Better than expected." "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" "It's an observation. Don Moretti's associates can be difficult. You handled them with appropriate respect. He'll be pleased." "Lucky me." Back in her room, Lena tore off the dress and jewelry, scrubbing her face clean of makeup like she could wash away the evening itself. She'd played her part, smiled and nodded and said all the right things, and she'd hated every second of it. But it had worked. She'd seen the shift in how those men looked at her, from curiosity to cautious acceptance. If she kept this up, if she convinced them she was adjusting, maybe they'd lower their guard. Maybe she'd find an opening. She was still awake when she heard footsteps in the hallway, sometime after midnight. Victor's voice, low and pleased, speaking to someone in Italian. Then silence. Tomorrow was her wedding day. Lena stood at the window watching the dark gardens below. Somewhere beyond those walls was freedom, Rome, the airport, home. It felt impossibly far away. One more day, she whispered to her reflection. Just survive one more day. Morning came too fast. Lena woke to find Signora Russo already in her room, throwing open curtains to let in brilliant sunshine. Your wedding day, the woman announced with what might have been genuine warmth. Time to begin preparations. The next several hours were a blur of activity. Hair and makeup artists arrived, transforming Lena into someone she barely recognized. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, with delicate curls framing her face. The makeup was subtle but flawless. She looked older, sophisticated, beautiful in a way that felt like wearing someone else's face. Then came the dress. It took 3 people to get her into it. The silk whispered against her skin, cool and expensive. The lace overlay caught the light, making her shimmer. When they finally let her look in the mirror, Lena barely recognized herself. She looked like a bride, a real bride, happy and glowing, ready to marry the man she loved. The illusion was perfect and completely false. Bellissima, the seamstress breathed, like a princess. More like a prisoner in a pretty cage, Lena thought, but kept her expression neutral. At 3:30, Signora Russo returned. It's time. The chapel was in the villa's east wing, a small stone building that looked like it had been standing for centuries. Inside, afternoon light filtered through stained glass windows, painting everything in jewel tones. Flowers covered every surface, those white roses and orchids Lena had seen yesterday, arranged with artistic precision. And at the front, beside Father Matteo, stood Victor. He'd traded his usual dark suits for something even more formal, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, a vest, a silver tie. He looked powerful, dangerous, and completely in control. When he saw Lena enter, his expression shifted into something that might have been genuine admiration. The walk down the aisle felt like a death march. Lena's heels clicked on the stone floor, each step bringing her closer to the point of no return. The chapel was empty except for the same 8 men from last night, serving as witnesses to this travesty. Victor extended his hand when she reached him. Lena took it because she had no choice, his fingers warm and steady around hers. Father Matteo began speaking in Italian, his voice echoing in the small space. Lena understood none of it, just let the words wash over her while her mind screamed. This was happening, actually happening. In minutes, she'd be married to this man, bound to him legally, and probably trapped forever. The vows, Father Matteo said in English, nodding to Victor. Victor turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. He began speaking in Italian, his voice low and steady, his eyes never leaving hers. The words were incomprehensible to Lena, but the tone was clear, solemn, binding, final. Then Father Matteo looked at her. And now, Miss Hayes, if you would repeat after me. This was it, the moment of choice that wasn't really a choice at all. The priest began speaking slowly in Italian, pausing after each phrase for Lena to repeat. She stumbled through the unfamiliar words, her accent probably atrocious, but she got through them. Promises she didn't understand in a language she couldn't speak, binding her to a man she didn't love. The rings, Father Matteo prompted. Marco stepped forward, presenting a small velvet box. Inside were 2 bands, one clearly masculine, heavy platinum, the other more delicate but still substantial, with diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. Victor took the smaller ring and reached for Lena's left hand. His fingers were steady as he slid the band onto her ring finger, the metal cool against her skin. With this ring, he said in English, clearly for her benefit, I bind myself to you. What's mine is yours. My protection, my name, my life. Then it was her turn. Lena's hand shook as she took the larger ring and reached for Victor's hand. Up close, she could see old scars on his knuckles, marks of violence she didn't want to think about. Repeat after me, Father Matteo said gently, giving her the English version. With this ring, I bind myself to you. With this ring, I bind myself to you, Lena whispered. What's mine is yours. What's mine is yours. She had nothing. No money, no freedom, nothing but the clothes on her back, and those belonged to Victor now too. My loyalty, my trust, my life. The words stuck in her throat. Lena looked up at Victor, found him watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Not quite triumph, not quite tenderness. Something in between. My loyalty, she forced out. My trust. My life. The ring slid onto his finger. Too easy. Too final. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Father Matteo declared in English. Don Moretti, you may kiss your bride. Lena's heart stopped. She hadn't thought about this part. Kissing Victor, here in front of witnesses, sealing this mockery of a marriage with physical contact. Victor's hand came up to cup her face, gentle but inexorable. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to see it coming, to prepare. Or maybe to panic. Lena couldn't tell. His lips met hers softly at first, testing, then firmer, more insistent. Not forcing, but claiming. The kiss was skilled, controlled, and completely overwhelming. Lena's first instinct was to pull away, but Victor's hand on her face held her there, and some traitorous part of her brain registered that he tasted like mint and wine and something uniquely him. When he finally pulled back, Lena's lips were tingling and her breath was coming too fast. Victor's eyes were dark, satisfied, possessive. "Hello, wife," he murmured, just for her. The witnesses erupted in applause. Marco called out something in Italian that made the others laugh. Victor tucked Lena's hand into the crook of his arm and turned them to face their audience, his expression one of pure masculine satisfaction. It was done. Lena Hayes was now Lena Moretti, wife to one of Italy's most dangerous men, and she had absolutely no idea how to survive what came next. The reception dinner felt like an extension of the nightmare, except now Lena wore a ring that caught the candlelight with every movement, a constant reminder of what she'd just done. Victor kept her close, his hand never leaving the small of her back as they moved through the transformed dining room where their wedding guests waited. The same 8 men from the previous night had been joined by their wives, women who ranged from Lena's age to their 50s, all dripping in jewelry and designer clothes, all watching her with expressions that varied from curiosity to barely concealed pity. Lena wondered which of them had been in her position once, sold or traded or forced into this world of marble floors and blood money. "Smile," Victor murmured in her ear as they approached the head table. "You look like you're attending a funeral." "Feels appropriate," Lena muttered back, but she arranged her face into something resembling contentment. The dinner was even more elaborate than the night before. Course after course of exquisite food that Lena pushed around her plate while conversation swirled around her in rapid Italian. She caught her name occasionally, saw the glances thrown her way, felt the weight of judgment from every direction. Marco's wife, a striking woman named Lucia, with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, leaned across the table during the 4th course. "How are you finding married life so far, Mrs. Moretti?" The title felt like a slap. Mrs. Moretti. That was her now, legally and completely. "It's been an adjustment," Lena said carefully, aware of Victor listening beside her. "Everything is so different from what I'm used to." "I imagine so. America to Italy, civilian life to this." Lucia gestured vaguely at the opulent surroundings. "It takes time to adapt, but you will. We all do eventually." There was something in her tone, sympathy, maybe, or warning. Lena couldn't tell which. "How long have you been married?" Lena asked, desperate to shift the focus away from herself. 23 years. I was 17 when I married Marco." Lucia sipped her wine, her expression unreadable. "Young, like you. Terrified like you. But I survived. More than survived. I built a life. You will too, if you're smart." Before Lena could respond, Victor stood, tapping his glass with a knife. The room fell silent immediately, all eyes turning to him. He spoke in Italian first, his voice carrying that natural authority that made people listen. Lena caught the word for wife, Mowgli, and her own name, but the rest was incomprehensible. Whatever he was saying made the men nod approvingly, and the women exchanged knowing looks. Then he switched to English, clearly for her benefit. And now, in a language my beautiful wife can understand. His hand found her shoulder, squeezing gently. Lena has entered our family today, bringing with her intelligence, strength, and a fire I find compelling. I expect each of you to treat her with the respect her position demands. She is under my protection, which means she is under yours as well. Anyone who threatens her, threatens me. The declaration should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like being claimed in front of an audience, Victor marking his territory for all to witness. To my wife, Victor concluded, raising his glass. May she learn to love this life as much as I already know I will love teaching her. Everyone drank. Lena forced down her wine, the alcohol burning in her empty stomach. The rest of dinner passed in a haze of toasts and well-wishes that felt increasingly surreal. By the time dessert arrived, some elaborate creation involving chocolate and gold leaf, Lena was exhausted, emotionally drained, and desperate to escape. But escape wasn't coming. Not tonight. Finally, mercifully, the dinner ended. The guests departed in a flurry of kisses and handshakes and knowing looks directed at Victor that made Lena's skin crawl. She knew what they were thinking, what they expected to happen next. When the last guest left, Signora Russo appeared with that efficient timing that suggested she'd been waiting just out of sight. I'll show Mrs. Moretti to your quarters, Don Moretti. No need. Victor's hand settled on Lena's waist. I'll take her myself. The walk through the villa felt like a death march. Victor guided her up the main staircase, down a different hallway than the one leading to her previous room. They stopped at a set of double doors that he opened to reveal a suite that made her previous quarters look like a closet. The space was massive, a sitting area with plush furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, artwork that belonged in the Uffizi. And beyond an open archway, a bedroom dominated by a bed that could sleep 4 people comfortably. Your things have been moved, Victor said, gesturing to a door on the left. That's your dressing room and bathroom. Mine are through there. He pointed to another door on the right. The bedroom we share, but as promised, you have your own space. Lena looked at the bed, her stomach twisting. You said, I said I wouldn't force you, and I won't. Victor shrugged off his jacket, draping it over a chair. But we will sleep in the same room. Appearances matter, Lena. The staff talks, and I need everyone to believe this marriage is real. It is real, unfortunately. Real in all ways, he clarified, loosening his tie. Which means sharing a bed. I promise to keep to my side unless invited otherwise. You'll be waiting forever. We'll see. He moved to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. Drink. You look like you need it. Lena took the glass because her hands needed something to hold. The liquor was smooth and strong, warming her from the inside. What happens now? Now you settle in. Tomorrow we begin your real education. Education in what? Language, for one. You need to speak Italian if you're going to survive here. Culture, protocol, how to move in our world. Victor sat on the edge of the bed, watching her over the rim of his glass. Also self-defense. That surprised her. Why would I need self-defense? Because my enemies would love to hurt me through you, and because I have no interest in a wife who can't protect herself. He took a long drink. There's a gym in the villa. Starting tomorrow, you'll train with Marco 3 times a week. He's been with me for 20 years. I trust him to teach you properly. The thought of learning to fight was almost appealing. Almost. And the rest of the time? You'll learn to run this household, meet with the other wives, attend functions at my side. You're Mrs. Moretti now. That comes with responsibilities. Sounds thrilling. It's survival. Victor stood, moving toward his dressing room. I suggest you change into something comfortable. It's been a long day. He disappeared through the door, leaving Lena standing in the middle of her new prison. She drained her glass and moved to the dressing room he'd indicated. It was enormous, lined with built-in wardrobes already filled with clothes she'd never chosen. The wedding dress would need to be hung up, but Lena couldn't face dealing with it yet. Instead, she found a simple nightgown. Silk, of course, because apparently cotton didn't exist in Victor's world, and changed in the attached bathroom. The bathroom was pure luxury. Marble everywhere, a shower that could fit 6 people, that tub she'd noticed before that was definitely big enough to swim in. Under other circumstances, Lena might have appreciated it. Now it just felt like another cage, prettier than most, but a cage nonetheless. When she emerged, Victor was already in bed, wearing only pajama pants, his chest bare and showing the kind of muscle definition that came from serious gym time. Scars marked his skin, a long one across his ribs, another near his shoulder, evidence of a violent life. He looked up from the book he was reading, his eyes traveling over her in the silk nightgown. Much better. Come to bed. Lena's feet refused to move. The bed was massive, but still. Sharing it with Victor felt like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. Lena. His voice held that note of command. I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. And standing there won't change anything. Come to bed. She forced herself to move, climbing onto the far side of the mattress and staying as close to the edge as possible. The sheets were cool silk against her skin, expensive and uncomfortable. Victor went back to his book like her presence beside him was completely normal. Lena lay rigid in the darkness beyond his reading light, staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of his breathing, the warmth radiating from his side of the bed, the subtle shift of the mattress when he turned a page. Relax, he said without looking up. You're wound so tight, you're going to give yourself a stroke. How am I supposed to relax? By accepting reality. We're married. This is your bed now. I'm your husband now. Fighting it only makes you miserable. I am miserable. Then stop fighting. Finally, he closed the book and set it aside, turning to look at her. In the low light, his face looked younger, less harsh. I know you hate this. I know you hate me. But Lena, this is happening whether you accept it or not. The question is whether you're going to make yourself suffer the entire time. You're asking me to just give up? I'm asking you to adapt. There's a difference. He reached over and turned off the reading light, plunging the room into darkness broken only by moonlight through the windows. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is a new day. Sleep felt impossible with Victor less than 2 feet away, but exhaustion eventually claimed her. Lena drifted off, still pressed against the far edge of the mattress, as far from her husband as physics would allow. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Victor already gone, his side of the bed cold. A note on his pillow, written in precise handwriting. Meeting in the city. Marco will come for you at 9 for your first training session. Wear appropriate clothing. V. The clock read 7:30. Lena had 90 minutes to prepare for whatever training entailed. She found workout clothes in the dressing room, expensive athletic wear in her size, because of course Victor's staff had thought of everything. By the time Marco knocked on the suite door at exactly 9, Lena was as ready as she'd ever be. Marco looked different in gym clothes, less intimidating, more human. The scar bisecting his eyebrow seemed less menacing in the morning light. Mrs. Moretti, he greeted her with a slight nod. Ready to begin? The gym was in the villa's basement, a full professional setup with equipment that looked brand new. Marco led her to a matted area in the corner. Don Moretti says you need to learn self-defense, he began in accented but clear English. Have you ever trained before? Does a high school self-defense seminar count? No. A slight smile. We'll start with basics. Awareness, positioning, how to break common holds. Eventually, we'll progress to actual combat techniques. The next hour was brutal. Marco was patient but exacting, showing her again and again how to position her body, where to strike, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. By the end, Lena was sweating and sore and oddly exhilarated. Good, Marco said as they finished. You learn quick. Natural athlete? I ran track in high school. That will help. Speed can save your life when strength fails. He tossed her a water bottle. Same time Wednesday. Don't skip meals or sleep. You need your strength. Over the following days, a routine emerged. Training with Marco 3 mornings a week, Italian lessons with a tutor named Signora Benedetti every afternoon, evenings spent either at formal dinners with Victor's associates or in the suite with her husband, learning to coexist in the same space without open hostility. Victor was gone frequently. Business in the city, he said, though Lena knew better than to ask details. When he was home, he was surprisingly tolerable. He didn't push for physical intimacy beyond what appearances required, didn't raise his voice, didn't do anything overtly cruel. He simply expected obedience, and when Lena provided it, he rewarded her with small freedoms. Permission to explore the villa grounds with an escort, access to the library, which held an impressive collection of English classics alongside Italian literature, video calls with her father once a week, supervised but permitted. Robert looked better each time they spoke, color returning to his face, the haunted desperation fading from his eyes. He'd found a small apartment, was looking into consulting work, seemed to be rebuilding. The sight of him healing should have made Lena feel better. Instead, it made her furious that her sacrifice was working exactly as intended. 3 weeks into the marriage, Lena's Italian had progressed enough that she could follow basic conversations. The language was beautiful, she had to admit, even if learning it felt like another chain binding her to this life. She was in the library one afternoon, struggling through an Italian novel with the dictionary at her elbow, when Victor found her. "How's the reading?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Slow. I know maybe 1 word in 3. "That's progress?" He gestured to the book. "Dante?" The Inferno felt appropriate. A genuine laugh, surprised and warm. "I suppose it would. What circle of hell are you in currently?" All of them simultaneously. Dramatic. But he was smiling, and Lena realized with a start that she'd made him genuinely laugh. It felt like a strange sort of victory. "I have something for you." He pulled a slim box from his jacket pocket and set it on the table between them. Lena eyed it warily. "It's not poisonous," Victor said dryly. "Open it." Inside was a smartphone, expensive and new. Lena's old phone had disappeared with her passport. "It's programmed with the villa's Wi-Fi," Victor explained. "You can call your father without supervision, check email, browse the internet, within reason." Within reason meaning you'll be monitoring everything? Meaning don't try to contact the American embassy or Google how to escape from the Italian Mafia. He said it lightly, but his eyes were serious. "This is trust, Lena. Don't make me regret it." Trust. Or a test to see if she'd betray him. Lena couldn't tell which. "Thank you," she said carefully, taking the phone. "You've earned it. Marco says your training is progressing well. Signora Benedetti reports you're a quick study with the language, and you've been—" He paused, searching for the word. "Cooperative. At dinners, in public. I appreciate that. I'm playing my part." "Are you?" Victor leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Or are you starting to adapt?" The question hit too close to something Lena had been trying not to examine, because the truth was, some things were getting easier. The Italian came more naturally each day. The routine felt less like prison and more like structure. She'd caught herself laughing at something Lucia said at a recent dinner, actually enjoying the conversation before remembering where she was and who she was with. "I'm surviving," Lena said finally. "That's all. And survival is the first step." Victor stood. "There's a gathering this weekend. Important people, business associates from Milan and Naples. I need you at your best." "Another performance?" "Another opportunity to prove you belong here." He moved toward the door, then paused. "You're doing better than I expected, Lena. Keep it up." The gathering turned out to be an elaborate party at a villa even more ostentatious than Victor's. Lena wore a midnight blue gown that cost more than her entire pre-Italy wardrobe, with sapphires at her throat that Victor had clasped there himself, his fingers lingering on her skin. "Remember," he'd murmured in the car, "you are Mrs. Moretti. You represent me and my interests. Be charming, be observant, and if anyone makes you uncomfortable, find me immediately." The party was overwhelming. Hundreds of people in formal wear, champagne flowing like water, conversations in rapid Italian that Lena struggled to follow. Victor kept her close at first, introducing her to a seemingly endless parade of wealthy, dangerous men and their wives. But eventually he was pulled away to discuss business, leaving Lena with Lucia and the other wives. They welcomed her into their circle with the practiced ease of women who'd done this dance many times before. "Your first real party," Lucia observed, pressing a champagne flute into Lena's hand. "How are you holding up?" "It's a lot." "It always is." An older woman named Francesca, married to Dante, patted Lena's arm. "But you'll learn to navigate it. The trick is to look interested without actually listening to the business talk, and to remember faces even when you forget names." They were teaching her, Lena realized. Not out of kindness, necessarily, but because her failure would reflect on all of them. The wives had their own hierarchy, their own rules, and Lena was the newest member being shown the ropes. She was learning the difference between the various factions within Victor's organization when she felt eyes on her. Turning, Lena found a man staring at her from across the room. He was younger than most of the guests, early 30s maybe, with dark hair and darker eyes, handsome in a sharp, dangerous way. "Who is that?" Lena asked Lucia quietly. Lucia followed her gaze and her expression tightened. "That's Alessandro Conte. He runs operations in Naples, and you should stay very far away from him." "Why?" "Because he and Victor have history. Bad history. Alessandro was supposed to marry Victor's sister years ago, but the engagement was broken. Some say Alessandro still carries a grudge." Before Lena could ask more, Alessandro was approaching. The wives around her subtly shifted, forming a protective semicircle. "Mrs. Moretti," Alessandro said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We haven't been formally introduced. I'm Alessandro Conte." Lena's training with Victor kicked in. Be polite, but distant. "Mr. Conti, how do you know my husband?" "We're old friends, business associates." He gestured to the party around them. "This world is smaller than it appears. Everyone knows everyone. I'm still learning the landscape." "Are you?" Those dark eyes assessed her with uncomfortable intensity. "You seem to be adapting well. Victor always did have excellent taste." Something in his tone made Lena's skin prickle. "If you'll excuse me." "One moment." Alessandro stepped closer, close enough that Lena could smell his cologne. "I wonder if Victor has told you the truth about what he does, about who he really is." "I know exactly who my husband is." "Do you?" He leaned in, voice dropping. "Do you know about the people who've died because of his orders, the families destroyed? Do you know what happened to the last woman foolish enough to cross him?" Lena's heart hammered, but she kept her face neutral. "I think you should step back." "I'm trying to help you. Victor Moretti is a monster, Mrs. Moretti, and you're just his latest—" "There you are." Victor's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He appeared at Lena's side, his hand immediately finding her waist, pulling her against him with obvious possession. The look he gave Alessandro could have frozen fire. "Conte, I see you've met my wife." "Just introducing myself." Alessandro's smile was all teeth. "She's lovely, Victor. Congratulations on your marriage." "Yes, I'm a very lucky man." Victor's fingers tightened on Lena's waist, just shy of painful. "If you'll excuse us, I need to speak with my wife. Privately." He guided Lena away before Alessandro could respond, his grip firm but controlled. They made it to a quiet corner of the villa before Victor stopped, turning to face her. "What did he say to you?" "Just introducing himself, like he said." "Lena." Victor's eyes bored into hers. "What did Alessandro say?" She hesitated, then repeated the conversation. Victor's expression grew darker with every word. "He's trying to turn you against me," he said finally. "Plant seeds of doubt? Make you question everything. That's what he does." "Is he wrong? About who you are, what you've done?" "No." Victor's honesty was brutal. "I've ordered deaths, destroyed lives, built my empire on blood and fear. You knew this when you married me." "I didn't have a choice when I married you." "No, you didn't." He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "But you have a choice now. Believe Alessandro, let him poison you against me. Make yourself miserable. Or accept what I am and make the best of it. Those aren't really choices. They're the only ones available." His thumb brushed her cheekbone, the gesture almost tender. "I can't change my past, Lena. I can only control my future, and I meant what I said on our wedding day. I will protect you, even from men like Alessandro, who would use you to hurt me." "Why does he hate you so much?" Victor's jaw tightened. "That's a long story for another time. Right now, I need you to stay close to me for the rest of the night. Don't talk to Alessandro again. Don't let him corner you. Understand?" Lena nodded, and Victor's expression softened fractionally. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, the first time he'd done so outside of public performance, and guided her back to the party. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Lena stayed glued to Victor's side, hyper-aware of Alessandro watching them from across the room. Whatever history existed between the two men, it was clearly unfinished and dangerous. The car ride home was silent. Victor stared out the window, his expression dark and brooding. Lena wanted to ask questions but couldn't find the words. Back at the villa, Victor dismissed their security detail and led Lena straight to their suite. Once inside, he poured himself a drink and drained it in one swallow. I should have known he'd try something, he muttered. Alessandro always was an opportunist. What happened between you two? Victor poured another drink, then surprised Lena by pouring one for her too. My sister, Juliana. Alessandro was engaged to marry her 15 years ago. It would have united our families, strengthened both organizations. What happened? She fell in love with someone else, a civilian, no connections to our world. She wanted out. Victor's expression was bleak. I helped her escape, got her new papers, a new life in Canada. Alessandro felt betrayed. He's never forgiven me for choosing my sister's happiness over a strategic alliance. Lena processed this. You helped her leave? She's my sister. Of course I helped her. But you won't let me leave. The parallel hung in the air between them. Victor's eyes met hers, and something flickered there. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. You're my wife, not my sister. The situations are different. Are they? Lena set down her untouched drink. You helped someone you love escape this world, but I'm trapped here. You don't love me. That's the difference. Neither did she love Alessandro. That's why she ran. Victor's jaw clenched. This conversation is over. Of course it is. Can't have me pointing out your hypocrisy. He moved fast, crossing the space between them in 2 strides and gripping her arms. Not hurting, but firm enough to make his point. You want to know the real difference, Lena? Juliana was born into this life. She understood the risks, the consequences. You're an innocent caught in circumstances beyond your control. If I let you go, you'd run straight home and never look back. And Alessandro and others like him would follow you there. They'd use you to get to me. So yes, you're trapped here. But it's for your own protection. That's a convenient excuse. It's the truth. He released her, stepping back. I'm not the villain in this story, Lena. I'm the only thing standing between you and people far worse than me. You're still a monster. You just admitted it. Yes, I'm a monster. Victor's eyes blazed. But I'm your monster, and in this world, that matters more than you know. He left her standing there, disappearing into his dressing room and closing the door with controlled force. Lena sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking. The encounter with Alessandro had cracked something open, made her see that Victor's world was even more dangerous than she'd realized, full of grudges and violence and people who would use her as a weapon without hesitation. And Victor, complicated, violent, controlling Victor, was apparently the only thing keeping that danger at bay. When he emerged from the dressing room 20 minutes later, he'd changed into sleep clothes and his expression had cooled to neutral. He climbed into bed without looking at her. Lena changed in the bathroom and joined him, the routine so familiar now it felt almost normal. They lay in the darkness, the space between them charged with unspoken tension. I'm sorry, Victor said finally, for losing my temper. Lena blinked in surprise. She'd never heard him apologize before. Alessandro brings out the worst in me, he continued. He always has. But I shouldn't have grabbed you like that. You didn't hurt me. Still, it was inappropriate. He turned on his side to face her, visible in the moonlight. I meant what I said, though, about protecting you. That's not a lie. I know. And strangely, she did. Victor was a lot of terrible things, but he seemed to keep his promises. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you regret it, forcing me into this marriage? Silence stretched between them. Then, ask me again in a year. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He reached across the space separating them and found her hand, linking their fingers together. Go to sleep, Lena. Tomorrow is a new day. He didn't release her hand. Lena lay there, feeling his pulse against her palm, and realized she wasn't pulling away. Some line had been crossed tonight. She wasn't sure which one or what it meant. But when she finally drifted off, Victor's hand was still wrapped around hers, warm and steady and undeniably real. Morning came with the smell of gunpowder. Lena woke to shouting in Italian, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the villa, and Victor already out of bed, pulling on clothes with the kind of speed that came from muscle memory. She sat up, heart hammering, as he grabbed something from his nightstand drawer. A gun, matte black and deadly. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice sharp with command. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Marco. Understand?" "What's happening?" "Someone's attacking the villa." Another burst of gunfire, closer now. Victor moved to the door, then paused and came back, gripping her face between his hands. "Listen to me carefully. There's a panic room behind the bookshelf in my dressing room. The third shelf from the bottom, press the red leather book. If they breach this floor, you hide there. You don't come out until I come for you personally. Clear?" Lena nodded, her mouth too dry for words. Victor kissed her hard, possessive, and desperate, then was gone. The door slammed behind him, and Lena heard the lock click from the outside. He'd locked her in. For protection or imprisonment, she couldn't tell. More gunfire, shouting, the sound of breaking glass. Lena's hands shook as she scrambled off the bed and ran to the window. Dawn was just breaking, painting the gardens in shades of gray and pink, and below she could see figures moving between the hedges. Men in dark clothing, carrying weapons, advancing on the villa with military precision. This wasn't a robbery, this was a coordinated attack. Lena backed away from the window, her mind racing. The panic room. Victor had said there was a panic room. She should hide, should follow his instructions, should... An explosion rocked the villa. The window shattered inward in a spray of glass. Lena screamed, throwing her arms up to protect her face as shards rained down around her. Her feet were bare. She could feel cuts opening on her soles as she stumbled back. The bedroom door burst open. Not Victor, not Marco. A stranger in tactical gear, his face covered, his gun raised and pointed directly at her. "Mrs. Moretti," he said in accented English, "you're coming with us." Every instinct screamed at Lena to run, but there was nowhere to go. The windows were destroyed, the only exit blocked by an armed man twice her size. She did the only thing she could think of. She grabbed the nearest heavy object, a marble bookend from the nightstand, and threw it at his head. Her aim was terrible. The bookend sailed past his shoulder and shattered against the wall. But it bought her a second. Lena bolted for Victor's dressing room, her feet leaving bloody prints on the marble floor. The panic room. Third shelf from the bottom. Red leather book. She could hear the man behind her, his boots heavy on the floor. Lena's fingers found the red book and yanked. Something clicked. A section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing a small room lined with monitors and supplies. She threw herself inside and slammed the hidden door just as the man reached the dressing room. The lock engaged with a solid thunk. Lena pressed her back against the wall, breathing hard as fists pounded on the other side. "Mrs. Moretti, don't make this difficult!" More pounding, then silence, voices in Italian, rapid and angry, footsteps retreating. Lena sank to the floor, her whole body shaking. The panic room was small but well equipped, monitors showing different angles of the villa grounds, shelves stocked with water and non-perishable food, a first aid kit, even a weapons locker. She could see the battle playing out on the screens. Victor's men were fighting back. She spotted Marco near the front entrance, coordinating defense with hand signals, his gun spitting fire. Other familiar faces from the villa's security team. They were outnumbered, but holding their ground. Then she saw Victor. He moved through the chaos like violence personified, his gun an extension of his arm. Even on the grainy security footage, Lena could see his precision, every shot deliberate, every movement calculated. He wasn't just defending his home. He was hunting. Two attackers tried to flank him from the garden. Victor saw them coming, dropped to one knee, and fired twice. Both men went down. He was already moving before they hit the ground, advancing toward the next threat. This was who Victor really was. Not the cultured man who read Dante and spoke 3 languages. Not the husband who held her hand in the dark. This was the monster he'd warned her about. Efficient, brutal, utterly without mercy. And he was magnificent in the most terrifying way possible. The battle lasted 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. Lena watched the monitors as Victor's men systematically eliminated the attackers. Some were captured, zip-tied, and dragged into the villa. Others retreated, vanishing into the woods beyond the property line. A few didn't retreat at all. Finally, Victor appeared on the monitor showing the main hallway outside their suite. He was covered in blood. Whether his or someone else's, Lena couldn't tell. He spoke into a radio, received a response, then approached the bedroom. "Lena." His voice carried through the door. It's me. It's over. You can come out now. Lena's hands fumbled with the lock. The bookshelf door swung open and she stumbled out, her feet screaming in pain from the glass cuts. Victor was there instantly, catching her before she could fall. You're hurt. His eyes went to her feet, then scanned her for other injuries. Where else? Just my feet, the windows. They exploded. There was glass everywhere. Shh, I've got you. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her to the bed and setting her down with surprising gentleness. His hands were steady as he examined her feet, picking out visible shards of glass with careful precision. This is going to hurt. He wasn't wrong. Lena bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood as Victor cleaned and bandaged her feet with supplies from the first aid kit. His touch was gentle but efficient, the same controlled violence he'd shown with the gun now channeled into care. Who were they? Lena asked when she could speak without screaming. Alessandro's men. Victor's voice was flat with rage. The attack was his message. He wants a war. He'll get one. Alessandro? The man from the party? The same. Victor finished bandaging her feet and stood, his jaw clenched. He wanted to send a message by taking you. Show me he could reach into my home, take what's mine. He failed. How do you know it was him? Because I'm currently interrogating 3 of his men in my basement. Victor's expression was arctic, and they're very motivated to talk. The casual way he said it made Lena's stomach turn. What are you going to do to them? Nothing you need to worry about. He cupped her face, his bloody hands leaving marks on her cheeks. You did well. You remembered the panic room. You stayed hidden. I'm proud of you. Proud. Like she was a child who'd followed directions correctly. But underneath the condescension, Lena heard genuine relief. Victor had been afraid for her. Actually afraid. You're covered in blood, she said quietly. Most of it's not mine. He glanced down at himself like he'd forgotten. I need to shower, change, deal with the aftermath. Will you be all right here for a few minutes? Lena nodded, and Victor disappeared into his dressing room. She heard the shower start, heard him moving around, and tried to process what had just happened. Men had attacked the villa. Attacked her. They'd wanted to kidnap her, use her as leverage against Victor, and Victor had stopped them with lethal efficiency. She should be terrified, should be planning to run the moment the opportunity presented itself. But instead, Lena found herself thinking about the way Victor had checked her injuries first, before dealing with anything else. The way his hands had shaken slightly when he'd bandaged her feet, the way he'd said he was proud of her. When he emerged from the shower, clean and dressed in fresh clothes, his phone was already ringing. He answered in rapid Italian, his expression growing darker with each passing second. I have to go, he said, ending the call. Marco's handling cleanup, but I need to send a response. Make sure Alessandro understands this was a mistake. What kind of response? Victor's smile was cold enough to freeze. The permanent kind. He moved to leave, then paused at the door. I'm assigning 2 guards to this suite. They'll be stationed outside the door at all times. You don't leave without escort. Understand? I'm a prisoner again. You're protected. There's a difference. His eyes softened fractionally. This isn't punishment, Lena. Alessandro knows about you now. He knows you matter to me. That makes you a target. I can't lose you. The words hung in the air between them. Can't lose you. Not won't. Can't. Be careful, Lena heard herself say. Victor's expression shifted into surprise, then something warmer. I always am. He left, and Lena heard him speaking to the guards he'd mentioned, issuing orders in that tone that expected absolute obedience. The rest of the day passed in a strange fog. Signora Russo appeared with breakfast and clean clothes, her face carefully neutral as she helped Lena change. Workers arrived to replace the shattered windows, their presence a constant reminder of the morning's violence. Lucia came to visit in the afternoon, bringing pastries and sympathy. I heard what happened. Are you all right? Physically, yes. Lena gestured to her bandaged feet. Emotionally is harder to measure. Alessandro is a fool. Lucia settled into a chair, her expression grave. Attacking Victor's home, trying to take his wife. He started something he can't finish. What will Victor do? What he has to. Send a message that his family is untouchable. Lucia studied Lena carefully. You're different than when you arrived. Stronger. I learned to fight. I don't mean physically. You carry yourself differently, like you belong here. Lucia leaned forward. That's good. The other wives, we were talking. You've earned respect. Not many do that so quickly. Lena didn't know how to respond. Respect from the wives of criminals wasn't something she'd been seeking, but apparently she'd gained it anyway. Victor didn't return until well after midnight. Lena was in bed, pretending to read, but actually listening for his footsteps. When he finally entered the suite, he looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his movements heavy with fatigue. Is it done? Lena asked. It's done. He sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumping. Alessandro won't be a problem anymore. You killed him. I sent people who killed his people. The message was delivered. Victor's eyes met hers. Does that horrify you? It should. Lena knew it should, but all she could think about was the man who'd burst into their bedroom with a gun, who'd tried to take her, who would have done something terrible if Victor hadn't stopped him. No, she said quietly, it doesn't. Victor's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something darker, more intense. You're adapting. I'm surviving, like you said. It's more than that. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. You're becoming one of us. The word should have felt like an insult. Instead, they felt like recognition. Lena had crossed some invisible line this morning. She'd hidden in a panic room instead of trying to escape. She'd been relieved when Victor survived. She'd felt satisfaction when Lucia said Alessandro wouldn't be a problem. She was adapting, and that terrified her more than any attack. I need to sleep, Victor said, standing to change. I'm dead on my feet. Lena watched him move through the routine they'd established, changing in the dressing room, brushing his teeth, the small domestic rituals that felt surreal given what he'd done today. When he finally climbed into bed, he didn't stay on his side. Instead, he moved to the center, pulling Lena against him. She should have resisted, should have pushed him away, but his arms felt safe, and after the terror of the morning, safety mattered more than pride. Thank you, Victor murmured against her hair, for staying in the panic room, for following instructions. You kept yourself safe, and that means everything. Lena's throat tightened. I was terrified. I know, so was I. His arms tightened around her. When I saw that man heading for our suite, all I could think was that I wouldn't reach you in time, that Alessandro would take you and I'd never get you back. But you did reach me. You stopped them. This time. Next time I might not be so lucky. Victor pulled back enough to look at her. I meant what I said earlier. You matter to me, Lena, more than I expected, more than is probably wise. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Victor, I know, you don't feel the same. Maybe you never will. But I need you to understand that I will burn down everything and everyone who tries to hurt you. Alessandro learned that today. Anyone else who comes for you will learn it too. It was the closest thing to a declaration of love Lena had ever heard from him, wrapped in threats and violence, but somehow still sincere. She didn't know what to say, so she did the only thing that felt right. She kissed him. It was different from their wedding kiss. That had been performance, obligation. This was choice. Lena pressed her lips to Victor's and felt him go still with surprise before his hands came up to cradle her face, deepening the kiss into something consuming. When they finally broke apart, Victor's eyes were dark with want and confusion. What was that? I don't know, Lena admitted. Maybe gratitude? Maybe adrenaline? Maybe I'm just tired of fighting. Don't do that unless you mean it. His voice was rough. Don't kiss me out of obligation or fear or because you think it's what I want. I can handle your hatred, Lena. I can't handle false affection. It wasn't false. The words escaped before Lena could stop them, and she realized with a start that they were true. Somewhere in the past weeks, something had shifted. The hatred hadn't disappeared, but it had been joined by something else. Familiarity, grudging respect, maybe even the beginnings of trust. Victor searched her face like he was looking for lies and finding none. Then he kissed her again, slower this time, thorough and devastating. His hands tangled in her hair, his body pressing against hers in a way that made Lena's breath catch. We should stop, he said against her lips, though he made no move to pull away. Why? Because if we don't, I won't be able to. And I promised I wouldn't push you. Lena's hands found the hem of his shirt, sliding underneath to touch warm skin and hard muscle. What if I'm saying you don't have to wait anymore? Victor's control cracked. He pulled back, his eyes searching hers with desperate intensity. Be sure, Lena. Be absolutely sure. Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. Was she sure? Lena examined her feelings, trying to untangle the mess of emotions. Fear was still there, buried but present. Anger, too, at her situation and the choices stolen from her. But underneath it all was something new, desire, genuine and startling. Not just physical, though Victor's hands on her skin definitely sparked that, but a desire to stop fighting, to accept this reality and find whatever happiness was possible within it. I'm sure, she said. What followed was nothing like Lena had imagined. Victor was controlled even in passion, his touches careful and seeking, constantly checking that she was with him. He took his time, learning her body with the same focused intensity he applied to everything else. When they finally came together, it felt less like surrender and more like claiming something that had been building between them for weeks. Afterward, they lay tangled in sweat-damp sheets, Lena's head on Victor's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow to normal. His fingers traced idle patterns on her back. I didn't expect that, he said quietly. Today of all days. Maybe that's why. Death makes you want to feel alive. Very philosophical for someone who just lost their virginity to a crime lord. Lena lifted her head to glare at him. How did you? I pay attention. His smile was gentle, not mocking. Was I your first? Heat flooded her cheeks. Does it matter? Only because I would have been more careful if I'd known. You were careful enough. Lena laid her head back down, feeling suddenly vulnerable. This doesn't change everything, you know. I'm still angry about how this started. I still hate that I didn't have a choice. I know. Victor's arms tightened around her. But maybe we can build something real anyway. Not instead of the anger, but alongside it. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her. No promises that everything would be perfect. No declarations that she'd learn to love him. Just an acknowledgement that they were both in this mess together and might as well make the best of it. Maybe, Lena agreed. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time since arriving in Italy, Lena didn't dream of escape. The next weeks brought more changes. Victor began including her in business discussions, not the violent parts, but the legitimate operations that formed the backbone of his empire. Real estate holdings, import businesses, investments. He explained the complex web of relationships that governed their world, teaching her to read people and situations. Marco's training intensified. After the attack, both he and Victor agreed Lena needed to be able to actually fight, not just defend. She learned to shoot, her aim improving with practice until she could hit center mass consistently at 20 feet. She learned knife work, pressure points, how to kill someone quickly if necessary. The knowledge should have disturbed her. Instead, it felt empowering, like she was taking back some control over her life and safety. Her Italian was nearly fluent now. She could follow conversations, contribute meaningfully at dinners, even crack jokes that made the other wives laugh. The villa felt less like a prison and more like home, especially when Victor was there. Their relationship shifted into something Lena couldn't quite define. Not love, not yet, maybe never, but partnership. They talked late into the night about books and philosophy, argued about politics and morality, found common ground in unexpected places. The physical intimacy continued, growing more natural each time, until Lena stopped counting and just enjoyed it. She called her father weekly, and Robert sounded stronger each time. He'd found work, was attending therapy, was rebuilding his life. He always asked if she was happy, and Lena found herself saying yes more often than not. It wasn't the life she'd chosen, but it was becoming a life she could accept. 2 months after the attack, Lena woke up nauseous. At first, she blamed bad seafood from dinner, but when the nausea persisted for 3 days, accompanied by exhaustion and tender breasts, a terrible suspicion formed. She waited until Victor left for a meeting, then asked Signora Russo for a pregnancy test. The older woman's knowing look made Lena's stomach clench, but she produced 3 tests without comment. All three showed the same result. 2 pink lines. Positive. Lena sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the plastic sticks, trying to process. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Victor's child, the man who'd essentially bought her, who'd forced her into marriage, who'd shown her violence and tenderness in equal measure. Terror warred with something else. A tentative, fragile hope. A baby would change everything. Would bind her to Victor permanently, yes, but would also give her something that was entirely hers. A family. A purpose beyond survival. She was still sitting there when Victor came home hours earlier than expected. He found her on the bathroom floor, surrounded by positive pregnancy tests, tears streaming down her face. Lena? He dropped to his knees beside her. What's wrong? Are you hurt? She couldn't speak, just handed him one of the tests. Victor stared at it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at her, and Lena saw something break open in his eyes. Joy, raw and overwhelming. You're pregnant, he said, his voice cracking on the words. I'm pregnant, Lena confirmed. Victor pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. We're having a baby. You're having my baby. Are you happy? The question came out small, uncertain. Happy? Victor laughed, the sound wet with emotion. Lena, I'm terrified. I'm ecstatic. He pulled back to look at her. Are you happy? Was she? Lena examined her feelings and found the answer surprising her. Yes, I think I am. Then we're going to do this right. Victor's hands framed her face. No more half measures. I'm going to give you and this baby everything. Protection, stability, a real family. Whatever you need. I need you to be safe. The words burst out before Lena could stop them. No more wars with Alessandro or anyone else. No more putting yourself in danger. Our child deserves a father who comes home. Victor's expression grew serious. I can't promise no danger. It's part of who I am, what I do. Then change what you do. Lena gripped his shirt. You have legitimate businesses. Focus on those. Let Marco handle the dangerous parts. Please, Victor. Our baby needs you alive. He was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with the request. Finally, he nodded. I'll transition. It'll take time. You don't just walk away from this world overnight, but I'll start shifting toward legitimate operations. For you. For our child. It was the biggest concession Victor had ever made. Lena kissed him, pouring every complicated emotion into it, gratitude and fear and that growing, terrifying thing that might be love. They spent that evening planning. Victor called his doctor, arranged for the best prenatal care money could buy. He started talking about converting one of the spare rooms into a nursery, asking Lena's opinion on colors and furniture like her thoughts actually mattered. That night in bed, his hand rested on her still flat stomach. Boy or girl? He asked. Too early to tell. I mean preference. What do you want? Lena considered. Healthy. That's all I want. Healthy and safe. Done. He said it like he could command the universe to comply. Our child will have everything. The best schools, opportunities, protection. They'll never know want or fear. They'll know love, Lena added. That's more important than anything else. Victor's eyes met hers in the darkness. Yes, they'll know love. From both of us. The certainty in his voice made something settle in Lena's chest. This wasn't the life she'd imagined, wasn't the future she'd planned. But lying there with Victor's hand on her stomach, their baby growing between them, Lena felt something she hadn't felt since arriving in Italy. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The pregnancy changed everything, just as Lena had known it would. Victor became almost obsessively protective, hiring additional security and insisting she be accompanied everywhere, even within the villa grounds. At first, Lena chafed against the restrictions, but the memory of armed men bursting into their bedroom tempered her resistance. Their child's safety mattered more than her pride. True to his word, Victor began the slow process of transitioning away from the more dangerous aspects of his operations. Lena watched him delegate responsibilities to Marco and the other trusted lieutenants, saw him spend more time in meetings with lawyers and accountants than with the hard-faced men who carried guns. It wasn't a complete transformation. You didn't leave that world entirely. but it was progress. The morning sickness lasted well into the second trimester, leaving Lena exhausted and irritable. Victor handled it with surprising patience, holding her hair back when she was sick, bringing her crackers and ginger tea, rearranging his schedule to be home more often. The man who'd once seemed incapable of tenderness was learning, slowly but surely. 3 months into the pregnancy, Lena's father asked to visit. The request came during one of their weekly video calls, Robert's face hopeful but uncertain on the screen. "I know it's a lot to ask," he said, "but I'd like to see you, make sure you're really okay, and meet my son-in-law properly." Lena looked at Victor, who was reading nearby but clearly listening. He met her eyes and nodded once. "I'll arrange it," Victor said, moving into the camera's view. "Mr. Hayes, you're welcome to visit for as long as you'd like. I'll send a car to the airport." But Robert's relief was palpable. "Thank you. I know I don't deserve your hospitality after everything, but you're family now," Victor interrupted. "That means something to me. We'll discuss the past when you arrive, but know that my priority is Lena's happiness. If seeing you makes her happy, then you're welcome here." They set a date for 2 weeks out, giving Lena time to prepare mentally for confronting her father face to face. The anger had dulled over the months, buried under the weight of adaptation and survival, but it was still there, a hard knot in her chest that tightened whenever she thought about how this had all started. "Are you nervous?" Victor asked that night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her growing belly. "Terrified," Lena admitted. "I don't know what to say to him. Part of me wants to forgive him, but part of me is still so angry." "Then say both. Tell him you're angry and you forgive him. Feelings don't have to be simple." Victor's thumb traced circles on her skin. "For what it's worth, I think he knows what he did was unforgivable. That's why he's been so careful not to push, not to demand anything from you." "You've been talking to him?" "Occasionally, making sure he's settled, has what he needs. He asks about you constantly, how you're feeling, if you're happy, if I'm treating you well." Victor's smile was slight. "I think he's terrified I'm going to hurt you." "Are you going to hurt me?" "Never intentionally." He pulled her closer. "You and this baby are everything to me now, Lena. I know I don't say it often enough, but it's true. You've changed my entire world." Lena turned in his arms to face him. "I need to tell you something." Concern flickered across his face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I just—" She took a breath, gathering courage. "I think I'm falling in love with you. I know that's insane given how this started, and I still hate that I never had a choice. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being my captor and started being mine." Victor's expression cracked open, vulnerability showing through the usual control. "Say that again." "I love you." The words came easier the second time. "I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. I love you, Victor Moretti, and I'm choosing to stay even though I could probably run now if I really wanted to. I'm choosing this life, this family, you." He kissed her with a desperation that stole her breath, his hands tangling in her hair like he was afraid she'd disappear. When they finally broke apart, his eyes were wet. "I've loved you since the moment you threw that bookend at the intruder," he said roughly. "Maybe before. You were supposed to be a transaction, a way to settle a debt. Instead, you became the most important thing in my life. Everything I'm doing, the transition, the changes, it's all for you, to be worthy of you. You don't have to be worthy, you just have to be here, be present, be real with me." "I can do that." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Lena. More than I knew I was capable of loving anyone." They made love slowly that night, a reaffirmation of everything they'd become to each other. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Lena felt the last pieces of her resistance crumble. This was her life now. Not the life she'd planned, but the life she was building with a man who'd started as her enemy and become her everything. Robert arrived on a crisp October morning, the villa's gardens ablaze with autumn colors. Lena waited in the entrance hall, Victor beside her, his hand a steady presence on her lower back. When her father stepped through the doors, she was shocked by how much older he looked. Hair grayer, lines deeper, but his eyes clearer than she'd seen them in years. "Lena," her name came out choked. "Look at you." She was 5 months pregnant now, her belly rounded and obvious beneath the flowing dress. Robert's eyes went to it, then to Victor, then back to her face. "Hi, Dad." They stood there awkwardly until Victor stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mr. Hayes, welcome to our home." Robert shook it, clearly nervous. "Thank you for having me, and for taking care of my daughter." "She takes care of herself these days. I just try to keep up." Victor glanced at Lena. "I'll give you two some privacy. Robert, we'll talk later. For now, your daughter has things she needs to say to you." He left them alone in the sitting room, and Lena gestured for her father to sit. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "You look good," Robert finally said. "Healthy. Happy, even." "I am. Both of those things." Lena folded her hands over her belly. "But we need to talk about what you did. Really talk about it." Her father's face crumpled. "I know. I've been waiting for this, for you to tell me what a monster I am." "You're not a monster. You're a desperate man who made terrible choices." Lena kept her voice steady. "You sold me, Dad. Traded me like property to save your own skin. Do you understand how much that hurt? How betrayed I felt?" "Every day. I think about it every single day." Robert's hands shook. "I tell myself I was trying to protect you, but I know that's a lie. I was protecting myself. And I used you to do it." "Yes, you did." The words hung in the air, brutal and honest. "And for a long time, I hated you for it. I hated you, and I hated Victor, and I hated my entire life." "And now?" Lena considered her answer carefully. "Now I've built something here. It's not what I would have chosen, but it's mine. Victor and I, we found a way to make this work. We're having a baby together, building a family. I'm not the helpless girl you brought here anymore. I can see that." Robert's eyes were wet. "You're stronger, more confident. You carry yourself differently." "I had to become stronger to survive, but that doesn't mean I forgive you easily." Lena leaned forward. "I need you to understand something. You don't get credit for how this turned out. You don't get to feel better because I'm happy now. What you did was unforgivable, and I'm only letting you into my life again because I'm choosing to, not because you've earned it." The words were harsh but necessary. Robert flinched but nodded. "I understand, and I don't expect forgiveness. I want to be part of your life again, if you'll let me. Be a grandfather to this baby. Maybe earn back a fraction of what I lost." "Then here are my terms." Lena's voice was firm. "You can visit, but you can't stay here. You can be involved in the baby's life, but you'll respect my boundaries, and you'll never, ever make decisions about my life again. I'm done being your pawn or your redemption project. Understood?" "Understood." Robert wiped his eyes. "Thank you for giving me even this much." They talked for another hour, working through years of hurt and betrayal with an honesty that was painful but necessary. By the end, Lena felt lighter. Not forgiven, exactly, but having drawn a line between past and future. Her father would be part of her life, but on her terms now. Victor found them later in the garden, walking slowly while Robert asked tentative questions about the pregnancy, and Lena answered with careful warmth. He approached with his usual confidence, but Lena saw the slight tension in his shoulders. He was nervous about this conversation, too. "Mr. Hayes," Victor said, "might we speak privately?" Lena started to protest, but her father squeezed her hand. "It's all right. We should talk, your husband and I." She left them on the terrace and retreated to the library, trying to focus on a book, but mostly just wondering what they were saying. An hour passed before Victor found her. "How did it go?" she asked immediately. "Better than expected." He settled beside her on the couch. Your father apologized, extensively. "I told him I understood desperation, even if I didn't approve of his methods." "Did you threaten him?" "Only a little." Victor's smile was slight. "I made it clear that you're under my protection now, and that includes protection from him if he ever tries to manipulate you again. He took it well." "He's afraid of you." "Good. He should be." Victor's hand found hers. "But I also told him something else. I told him that despite everything, I'm grateful, because his mistake brought you into my life, and you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Lena's throat tightened. "You told him that?" He needed to hear it. Needed to know that while I don't forgive what he did, I recognize that something good came from it. Victor pulled her close. Your father will never be my friend, but he's family now. I'll treat him accordingly. Robert stayed for 3 days, growing more comfortable with each passing hour. He and Victor developed a cautious mutual respect, bonding over their shared desire to protect Lena. By the time he left, promising to return for the birth, the worst of the tension had eased. The months that followed were a blur of preparation. The nursery was completed, soft yellows and whites, filled with furniture that cost more than some people's houses. Lena's Italian was now flawless, her understanding of Victor's world comprehensive. She'd become adept at reading the subtle power dynamics at gatherings, knowing when to speak and when to observe, how to project strength while remaining graceful. The other wives had fully accepted her into their circle. Lucia became something like a friend, teaching Lena the unspoken rules that governed their world. At a dinner party 7 months into the pregnancy, Lucia pulled her aside. "You've done well," the older woman said. "Better than most. You came here unwilling and became one of us anyway. I didn't have much choice. We always have choices. You chose to adapt instead of break. That takes strength." Lucia's eyes were knowing. "And you chose to love Victor. I see it when you look at him. That wasn't forced." "No," Lena admitted. "That was all me." "Good. He needs someone strong enough to stand up to him. The yes men surround him all day. You're the only one who tells him no." It was true. Lena had learned to pick her battles, but when something mattered, she pushed back. Victor respected her for it, even sought her opinion on business decisions. She'd become his partner in truth, not just in name. The baby came on a snowy January morning, 3 weeks before the due date. Lena woke to contractions that quickly intensified, and within an hour they were rushing to the private hospital Victor had arranged. He stayed by her side through every moment, his hand crushed in hers as she cursed him in both English and Italian for getting her pregnant in the first place. "Never again," she panted between contractions. "We are never doing this again." "Whatever you want," Victor agreed, looking terrified. "Just breathe, amore. You're doing amazing." 8 hours later, their daughter entered the world, screaming her outrage at the indignity of birth. The doctor placed her on Lena's chest, and time seemed to stop. She was perfect, dark hair like Victor's, but with Lena's eyes, tiny and furious, and absolutely beautiful. "A girl," Lena breathed, tears streaming down her face. "We have a daughter." Victor was crying too, unabashedly, as he kissed Lena's forehead and stared at their baby with awe. "She's perfect. You're perfect, both of you." They named her Sofia, after Victor's grandmother. Sofia Giuliana Moretti, carrying the name of the sister who'd escaped to freedom and the legacy of a family being reborn. Recovery was brutal, but Victor was there for every moment, changing diapers at 3 a.m., walking a colicky baby for hours, learning to swaddle and feed and soothe with the same focused intensity he'd once applied to violence. Watching him cradle Sofia in his massive hands, singing Italian lullabies in his rumbling voice, Lena fell in love with him all over again. Robert visited when Sofia was 2 weeks old, his face crumpling the moment he held his granddaughter. "She's beautiful, just like her mother." "She has your nose," Lena pointed out, and her father laughed wetly. Poor thing. It was the first joke they'd shared since before Italy, and it felt like healing. The next year passed in a blur of sleepless nights and first smiles, of watching Sofia grow and change daily. Victor was a devoted father, rearranging his entire schedule around his daughter's needs. He completed his transition to legitimate business, officially retiring from the dangerous aspects of his empire. Marco took over those operations, and while Victor remained the ultimate authority, he was removed from the day-to-day violence. "I want Sofia to know her father," he explained one night as they watched their sleeping daughter. "Not wonder if I'm coming home, not grow up afraid." "She'll know you," Lena assured him, "and she'll know she was loved enough that you changed your entire life for her." When Sofia was 18 months old, Lena discovered she was pregnant again. Victor's reaction was pure joy, tempered by concern for Lena's health. This pregnancy was easier. No morning sickness, more energy, a sense of confidence that came from knowing what to expect. Their son was born on a brilliant summer day, healthy and screaming. They named him Marco Robert. Marco for the man who'd protected them both. Robert for the grandfather who'd found redemption through his grandchildren. Victor sobbed when he held his son for the first time. this powerful man reduced to tears by the tiny life in his arms. Two perfect children, he said to Lena later, both babies sleeping in the nursery while their parents finally had a moment alone. You've given me everything. We gave each other everything, Lena corrected. This family, this life, we built it together. She meant it. The girl who'd been dragged to Italy against her will was gone, replaced by a woman who'd forged her own path through impossible circumstances. Lena had transformed from victim to survivor to something more. A mother, a partner, a force in her own right. The villa that had once felt like a prison now felt like home. She'd made it hers, filling it with warmth and laughter and the chaos of young children. The gardens where she'd once plotted escape were now where Sophia took her first steps. The bedroom where she'd cried herself to sleep was now where she fell asleep in her husband's arms, content and loved. On their 5th anniversary, Victor surprised her with a trip, just the two of them, leaving the children with Lucia and Marco for a long weekend. They flew to the Amalfi Coast, staying in a villa perched on cliffs overlooking the sea. Do you remember what you said to me on our wedding night? Victor asked as they sat on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky. That I'd hate you forever? That? He smiled. You were so fierce, so angry. I thought you'd never adapt, never accept this life. I thought the same thing. Lena leaned against him. But somewhere along the way, accepting became choosing. I don't hate you, Victor. I haven't for years. I know, you love me instead. You tell me every day. And you love me back. Despite everything, we found something real. Victor turned to face her, his expression serious. I need you to know something. If you ever want to leave, truly leave, I won't stop you. I know how this started. I know you never had a choice, but you have one now, always. The offer should have tempted her. 5 years ago, it would have been everything she wanted. But Lena looked at the life they'd built, the children sleeping peacefully back home, the family they'd created from chaos, the love that had grown from the darkest of beginnings, and knew her answer. I'm not leaving. This is my home. You're my home. She took his hand. I'm choosing you, Victor, every day for the rest of my life. Not because I'm trapped, but because I want to. His kiss was soft, reverent, full of the kind of love that transforms people. They made love that night with the windows open, the sound of the sea providing a soundtrack to their reaffirmation of everything they'd become. Years passed in a cascade of memories. Sophia starting school, brilliant and stubborn like her mother. Marco learning to walk, then run, then cause delightful chaos wherever he went. A third child, another daughter they named Juliana, completing their family. Birthday parties and family dinners, graduations and celebrations. Victor aged gracefully, the gray at his temples spreading but his strength remaining. He became a fixture in legitimate business circles, respected for his acumen and feared for his past. But he was known primarily as a family man, devoted to his wife and children in a way that made other men envious. Lena grew into her role as Mrs. Moretti with a power all her own. She became involved in charity work, using the family's wealth to fund education programs and women's shelters. The other wives followed her lead, transforming from trophy wives into a force for actual good. Lucia often joked that Lena had revolutionized their entire world. Robert remained part of their lives, a doting grandfather who'd found peace in his redemption. He never remarried, never tried to rebuild what he'd destroyed. Instead, he poured his love into his grandchildren, who adored their nonno Robert, without knowing the complicated history that had brought them all together. On their 10th anniversary, Victor took Lena back to the villa's chapel where they'd married. It looked exactly the same. Stained glass throwing colored light across the stone floor, flowers everywhere. Father Matteo waiting with a gentle smile. What are we doing here, Lena asked. Renewing our vows. Victor took her hands. The first time you had no choice. This time, I want you to choose me freely, in front of witnesses who know the truth. Their children were there, dressed in formal wear and barely containing their energy. Marco and Lucia, Robert, the other wives, and their families. Everyone who mattered to them gathered to witness something beautiful. Father Matteo began the ceremony in Italian, and this time Lena understood every word. The vows she'd stumbled through 10 years ago now flowed easily, full of meaning and choice. I, Lena Moretti, Choose you, Victor, she said clearly. Not because I'm forced, but because I love you. Not because I'm trapped, but because I'm free and I choose to stay. You are my partner, my love, my home, and I promise to stand beside you for all the days of my life. Victor's vows were equally powerful, his voice strong despite the tears in his eyes. I, Victor Moretti, choose you, Lena. You took a monster and made him a man. You transformed a house into a home. You gave me children, purpose, and a love I never thought I deserved. I promise to honor you, protect you, cherish you, and above all, to give you the choice I once stole. Every day, I choose you. Every day, I hope you choose me back. I do, Lena whispered. I do, Victor echoed. Their kiss was witnessed by applause and cheers, their children running forward to be swept up in their parents' embrace. The photographer captured the moment. A family united, a love hard won, a future bright with possibility. That night, after the celebration had ended and the children were asleep, Lena and Victor stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The same gardens where she'd once plotted escape, where she'd learned to fight, where she'd slowly fallen in love with the man who'd claimed her. Do you ever regret it? Victor asked quietly. The life you lost? The future you might have had? Lena considered the question honestly. There were moments, fleeting, when she wondered what might have been. A normal college experience, a different career, a love story that began with choice instead of coercion. But those moments were rare and getting rarer. I regret how it started, she said finally. I'll always regret that. But I don't regret where we ended up. This life, these children, you. I wouldn't trade any of it. Even knowing what you know, what I've done, even knowing everything. She turned to face him. You're not the same man who forced me into marriage. I'm not the same girl who was dragged here terrified. We both changed, Victor. We made each other better. He pulled her close, and they stood there in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge overhead. Somewhere in the villa, one of their children called out, probably Sophia, who still had nightmares sometimes. Lena started to pull away, but Victor stopped her. I'll go. You stay here, enjoy the peace. She watched him disappear inside, heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard his low voice soothing their daughter back to sleep. This man who'd once been capable of such violence was now the gentlest father, the most devoted husband. The transformation was complete. Lena touched the ring on her finger, the same ring Victor had placed there 10 years ago, now worn and familiar. Back then it had felt like a shackle. Now it felt like a promise kept. Her phone buzzed with the text from Lucia. Beautiful ceremony. You two are disgustingly in love. Lena smiled and typed back. Took us long enough to get here. The best things usually do. It was true. Their love hadn't been immediate or easy. It had been forged through fear and anger, built slowly through small moments of trust, solidified through shared trauma and triumph. But it was real in a way that fairy tale romance could never be, tested, tempered, and proven unbreakable. Victor returned, pulling her back against his chest. Sophia's already asleep again. Amazing how quickly they bounce back at that age. We should go to bed too. Marco will be up at dawn ready to destroy something. 5 more minutes. His arms tightened around her. I want to remember this moment. Perfect peace. Perfect happiness. Our family safe and whole. Lena leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat against her back. It won't always be this perfect. Life doesn't work that way. I know, but we'll face whatever comes together, like we always have. Together. That word meant everything. Lena had started this journey alone, terrified, with no one to trust. Now she had a partner who'd proven time and again that he'd walk through fire for her. They'd built something remarkable from the worst possible beginning, a family rooted in love, a marriage strengthened by adversity, a future full of promise. I love you, she said softly. I love you more. Victor's lips brushed her temple. Thank you for choosing me. Every day, every moment. Thank you for giving me this life. Thank you for becoming someone worth choosing. They stood there until the night grew cold, reluctant to let go of the perfect moment. But eventually, they went inside together, checking on their sleeping children before retiring to their room. The bed they'd once shared as strangers was now a sanctuary of comfort and intimacy. Lena fell asleep in Victor's arms, safe and loved, exactly where she belonged. And if somewhere deep inside, a small part of her still remembered the terrified girl who'd been traded like property, who'd cried herself to sleep in this very room, who'd sworn she'd never forgive or forget, well, that girl was honored too. Her strength had made everything possible. Her refusal to break had forged the woman Lena had become. The beginning had been dark, brutal, unforgivable. But they'd taken that darkness and transformed it into light, built a family from a forced transaction, found love in the last place anyone would look for it. It wasn't the story Lena would have written for herself, but it was hers, completely and truly. And she wouldn't change a single page. Outside, the Italian night settled over the villa, quiet and peaceful. Inside, a family slept, children dreaming innocent dreams, parents resting in each other's arms, all of them safe and loved and whole. From tragedy and coercion had come something beautiful. From the ashes of stolen choice had risen the phoenix of chosen love. The journey had been impossible, the destination unexpected, but the result was undeniable. Lena Moretti was home. Not the home she'd been born to, but the home she'd built with her own two hands and an unbreakable will. And she was finally, impossibly, completely happy. The story that began with fear ended with love, and that was the only ending that mattered.